It's not my fault she can't handle the beef. I, F42, live with my husband, M45, and our daughters, F18 and F16. We live in a different city from our families due to work. A few months ago my sister asked me if her daughter Kate, F19, can stay with us since she was starting college in our city. She was scared of her daughter moving away for the first time, especially to a big city like ours. I knew Kate from before COVID time and remembered her to be a smart and sweet kid. I discussed it with my husband and we agreed she can stay with us. Kate moved in around 2 months back. She was fine, came home on time, let us know her whereabouts, no partying. The issue was with food. She had turned vegan. Normally I cook for my family. I cook just one meal for all. And we are all dairy-obsessed people. Milk for cereal, butter in pancakes, cheese in everything. Eggs were our staple. Kate needed separate dishes altogether and we needed vegan substitutes for her. Since those are way more expensive, I told my sister she should give money to Kate so she can buy it. She started telling me how family doesn't take money from family to feed kids. I told her I would feed Kate the same as other kids but I won't spend excess money on her. She said that's fine. Since her mom won't buy it, Kate started buying plant-based substitutes with her pocket money. For dishes like pancakes, I made food for her using her ingredients. But every time I made a huge non-vegan meal, she expected me to provide equivalent vegan meals. I drew a line at that. I can't spend so much time cooking another meal. I mean, who did she think she was? Michelle Obama? Why on earth would I cook a separate meal for someone who chooses not to eat my food? She said everyone else got to eat it while she was left with few stuff to eat. I told her she is free to cook for herself and she hated that idea. It came to a boiling point last weekend when we had a barbecue dinner with friends. She got upset that her salad was very basic. It was good only with chicken added, and had nothing else to eat. She complained and I told her she can cook for herself. She got even more upset at that and called her mom crying about how I didn't make any good meals for her and expected her to fend for herself. My sister called me yelling at me how I didn't love her daughter and was intentionally excluding her. My parents are also taking their side. I think my niece and her mama got jokes but maybe that's just me. My sister-in-law wouldn't save my drowning daughter because of her trauma of water, but she told me it would have been better for my daughter to die than have a mom like me. I have a daughter, Heather too, with my husband. My brother is married to my sister-in-law Kelly. She has one son from an ex and one daughter, Sadie, 3, who is with my brother. We've never been super close, but before all this, we had a good relationship overall, and I liked her. Kelly has a fear of going into the water. When she was 6, she was at a family barbecue and began to drown in the pool. So many kids splashed around in the water that the adults just thought she was playing. She lost consciousness and came very close to dying. She got into therapy and has since allowed her son and Sadie to learn how to swim. When Sadie was 1 to 2 years old, she'd only allow it as long as her son or my brother were right next to her. She seems fairly laid back over having her kids in the water, even without strict supervision. This surprised me, but it's her life, so I never commented. A few months ago, she and my brother even told me she was doing exposure therapy and slowly learning not to let her fears control her. She's even had a small swim lesson and felt fairly calm walking around in a shallow pool. Every Thanksgiving and Christmas, we visit my parents in their retirement neighborhood in Florida. Kelly has told me about her past and the time we spent together there for the holidays. It has a nice community pool with a recreation center. There's only a lifeguard on duty on Saturday, but the rec center has employees at the front desk if you go inside. While we were there for Thanksgiving, the Weather Channel predicted that only one day would be nice enough for the kids to swim. My sister-in-law, brother, husband, and I planned to take them in the late afternoon. My grandparents were busy with another event that day. I fell and sprained my ankle. My husband said he'd drive me to urgent care. I didn't want my daughter to miss the pool outing, so I said I'd allow her to go with my brother's family. My brother and nephew promised to be by her side the whole time. My brother and nephew wanted to play ping pong at the table in the recreation center. Sadie and Heather were still splashing in the shallow 3 feet end of the pool with Kelly watching in a lounge chair. She said they could go because she'd keep an eye on the girls and get them if they got into any trouble. Kelly had put Heather in a pool tube around her waist to float. Somehow, Heather flipped over and was stuck upside down in the water. She began to kick and panic, so Sadie got scared and started to cry. Kelly noticed and also started to freak out. She began to scream at Sadie to get her out or flip her back over. Sadie tried at first but wasn't strong enough and couldn't get a good grip. Plus, she was scared and confused by her mother's yelling. I know she has a legitimate trauma, so I understand why that would scare her, and I would have been fine with her not jumping in herself. I wouldn't be so upset if she had the common sense to run into the rec center to grab anyone else to save my daughter. It was the next building over. Everything would have turned out much better if she had run inside to ask for help. I had no idea what was happening in this woman's head, but she grabbed a pool net to get Heather out. This would have made sense if she had used it to guide my daughter to a place she could grab her out, but it seemed that she tried to carry my daughter in the net, and when she didn't fit, she moved to a different strategy that looked awkwardly smacking her. This moved Heather to the deeper part of the pool. She never seemed all that stupid to me, so I don't know why she tried to save my daughter in the most inefficient way possible. Eventually, a rec center employee heard her panicking and ran outside. He had CPR, and she threw up a lot of water. They called an ambulance, and my husband and I met everyone at the hospital. Heather had a lot of bruises on her lower half. I asked what happened, and Kelly told me about the pool net and everything, plus, how she hadn't immediately gotten someone else. I was so angry I yelled at the boys and her how she could see my daughter dying and not do anything. She said, I kept yelling at Sadie to help her. This pissed me off. She was blaming all this on her toddler. I know everyone makes mistakes, but seriously? When I asked her why she didn't sprint for help right away, she said she was overwhelmed and that I shouldn't attack her because my kid couldn't swim to save herself. The pool tube around her waist was trapping her upside down. This set me off. I wasn't still and disgusted with my brother, but her words made me break and lose it. I started to scream at her about how pathetic she was and that she was just as bad as her family members who let her drown. I kept yelling until she started to sob, and security made us stop. My husband and I were so upset we demanded to see the rec center footage from the pool security camera, and we saw exactly what happened. After we returned home, I sent a short text to Kelly, saying that I was sorry for losing my cool. I was completely out of line and blamed the wrong person to deal with it all. She sent back a paragraph saying I'm a psycho bitch for blaming her for her trauma response. She even said maybe it would have been better for my daughter to die than have a mom like me. I haven't contacted her or my brother since. My parents began to yell at me when I yelled at Kelly, so I haven't spoken to them much either. For Christmas, we aren't joining them this year. My husband fully agrees with me.
I think I ruined my friend's relationship. I know the title sounds really off without context, but hear me out. My 22F best friend, 22F, has been dating a guy, 26 male, for a bit over than a year now. It seems like they have an ideal relationship from a third-person perspective, but it's absolutely not ideal. They have serious fights very often, serious meaning breaking things, shouting so loud that the neighbors can hear them, etc., and he even gets violent with her sometimes. I've told her to leave him multiple times and that if he behaves that way he doesn't love her, but she supports that he's her soulmate and she can't let go. When she came to uni with a bruised eye, I lost it. I knew I had to take action. Digging deep into his IG account, I found out that he hadn't been exactly loyal. He had been seeing other girls while being with my best friend. Now, of course, on one hand I was not happy to learn that, but on the other hand, I realized that once a cheater, always a cheater. Thus meaning, he was an easy target if you get what I mean. I created a fake account and made it pretty realistic. I uploaded a bunch of pictures and waited a bit to gain some followers before approaching the boyfriend. When I had gained about 500 followers, I followed him and waited for a follow back. Of course he was very quick to respond. Not long after the first message, the conversation got steamy and we arranged to meet up to have fun. Of course I had screenshotted everything and sent the hey girly message to my best friend. When I knew she'd seen it, I deleted the account. After that, my best friend finally broke up with him. I felt so guilty holding her in my arms while she was sobbing her heart out, but I also knew that this was going to do her nothing but good. She was out of that toxic relationship at last. Doctors, what's the worst state a person has come in? Doc here. Had a nurse come grab me while I was charting. Doc, you need to see room 6 right now. For those of you who don't work in the when one of the nurses tells you to go see a patient, you run. I took a few steps towards room 6 and the smell hit me like a truck. I gagged on the spot. I peered through the glass doors of room 6 and noticed a well-appearing, young female. Because she looked so well, I knew I could spend an extra minute taking a quick detour to find a handful of alcohol swabs that I promptly opened and shoved in my mask to help quench the smell. I walk into the room and find this young 30-year-old female with her leg inside a trash bag, sitting next to her parents and family. They do not seem fazed by the rancid smell. Meanwhile I hear one of our veteran nurses vomiting in the background. I introduce myself to everyone, and ask what brought the young lady to the and why her leg was in a trash bag. She starts not by talking, but by simply removing the trash bag, and there I saw it, a monstrous tumor protruding from her tibia. She then proceeds to explain, it started 6 months ago with a cut that wouldn't heal. It then changed to appear like a fungal skin infection. She googled it, and was confident in the diagnosis. She decided to treat it by starving it of sugar, and going on a sugar-free, vegan diet. Eventually she convinced her whole family to do the same in order to help treat the infection. And then about a month prior to her visit today, it was too large and painful to even walk around, so she's been living in her room at home taking virtual online college courses. She added that she's lost 30 pounds since the infection began siphoning the nutrients away from my body a few months ago. Because it grew and developed so slowly, her family and herself were completely acclimated to the smell and didn't notice anything. By this point in the conversation, I heard another nurse vomit. I then sat down and delivered the bad news, that this was not a fungal infection, and likely advanced cancer, that we would be admitting her to the hospital for further workup and surgical resection. I think my girlfriend has been using my gym socks to wipe her SS after going to the bathroom. Please help. I don't even know where to start with this. I'm dumbfounded. She just stormed out the house and I'm sitting on the bed asking myself a lot of questions. I live a pretty normal life, and I thought so did my girlfriend. We've been together for a few months and after things got serious, we moved in together. We started sharing a lot of the household responsibilities, but the one thing she was adamant on doing was the laundry. She would come home and find me in the bedroom getting the laundry together and would quickly ask me to go do something else. I'd come back to finish the laundry and she would have already started it. I always thought it was sweet and never her job to do it alone, but hey, if it makes her happy to do it all the time, I wouldn't stop her. This is where it takes a turn for the weird. I keep all my socks and underwear in the bottom drawer of my dresser. I also go to the gym frequently, so I always keep a good supply of clean gym socks ready to go. I never kept count, but I know by just a visual glance I have several pairs. This morning when I went to grab a fresh pair to pack for the gym, I noticed there were several dress socks, but no gym socks. Again, Not weird, they must have been in the laundry. I went to check the laundry basket and it was empty, so I checked the washing machine and dryer. Both were empty. I couldn't figure out where all of my gym socks had gone. So, I did the very natural thing of asking my girlfriend what had happened to them. After all, she is the one who does the laundry all the time. She went silent, turned red and ran out of the room. When I went after her to see if she was okay, she wouldn't talk to me. I told her I wasn't mad, I was just looking for my socks. She kinda mumbled I don't know. I still wasn't mad, of course, but I was super confused. Socks just don't disappear. So I asked her again, even laughed about it, and she just looked at me and got mad and said I'll buy you new ones. The first thought that went through my head was she had somehow managed to destroy my socks while washing them. I thought the sight of that was actually pretty funny, so I joked with her about ruining my socks. She started immediately crying. Like, full-on sobbing. At this point I don't care about the socks anymore, I want to know what's wrong with my girlfriend. I sat down next to her on the bed and put my arm around her and asked her if she was okay. She just kept saying she was sorry and that she would buy me new socks. I tried assuring her again it was okay. Even went so far as to say I would buy new socks and she didn't have to. I sat with her for a few minutes trying to calm her down and eventually had to get ready for work. I told her I loved her and got my things together to leave for the day. On my way out I grabbed the garbage to take outside. When I got outside I lifted the lid off the garbage can and I noticed a small plastic bag sitting on top of the garbage already in there. I could see through the bag, kind of the semi-see-through ones. There were socks in the bag. Since I was sure she had somehow managed to ruin the socks washing them, I wanted to see for myself. I opened the bag and immediately regretted my choice. There, inside the bag, were several pairs of my gym socks covered in what looked like poop. As soon as the smell hit me I knew it was poop. We don't own any pets. We don't have any kids. Whose poop was on my socks? Work could wait. I couldn't go the rest of the day wondering why my gym socks were covered in poop and inside a plastic bag in the garbage can. I grabbed the bag and walked back inside. As soon as my girlfriend saw the bag she flipped out and started yelling at me. She said I shouldn't be going through the garbage and that I was disgusting for bringing it back into the house. I asked her to calm down and that I just wanted an answer as to why. There was poop on my socks. I wasn't blaming her for anything, but she started accusing me of blaming her. That's when it clicked. I don't know what it was that led me to ask this, but everything leading up to this moment had just been so crazy. I asked her, "Is this your poop?" She started sobbing again and ran out of the house. I didn't go after her this time. So, now I am sitting on my bed with a bag, poopy socks on the floor and a lot of questions in my head. The only conclusion is that she used them after going to the bathroom. That alone has its own set of questions above everything else. I sent her a text asking her to come back. She hasn't responded yet. I don't even know what I'm going to say when, if, she gets back.
What was your aha moment during a toxic relationship that made you realize people never change? Back when I was middle-aged and divorced, I dated a woman for close to 3 years. There was much that was good with us, but she had a serious anger problem. She could turn from a Dr. Jekyll to Mr. Hyde in an instant, and it wasn't just me. For example, I remember how excruciating it was when she once went off on a waitress. So, my aha moment came when I was at her house. She flipped into her out-of-control anger mode over something I can't even remember. I looked at her as she went off. I felt a sense of calm come over me as I realized what I had to do. I realized I had to save myself from this relationship and quite possibly a life of pain if we ended up getting married. After she finished talking, she gave me a harsh look waiting for me to reply. I apologized for whatever it was I had done. I then told her that for me this was like data point number 52. How many more data points did I need to know she had an anger problem? This just couldn't work for me. And then I gave the coup de grace by looking her in the eyes and firmly saying this relationship is over. Painfully, my serious girlfriend looked at me in horror and nearly collapsed. She wasn't expecting my reply. I stuck around for a couple of hours until she calmed down. We talked. I then left. We never went out again or even kept in touch. It was over.
My wife cheated on me, and now she wants me back. My wife cheated on me with her male best friend, whom I have known for over 21 years. I've always been paranoid about him, but she told me not to worry, claiming he was just a friend. We've been married for 20 years, and she started coming home from work late, attributing it to a recent promotion. I didn't question it much until she mentioned clearing her texts weekly as they slowed down her phone. 2 weeks after our 20th anniversary, I discovered they had been involved for months. When I confronted her, she initially denied everything. Suspecting the lie, I went to pull up her texts and found they had been deleted. Unbeknownst to her, I had screenshotted and sent them to myself for proof. I confronted her again, providing evidence that she was caught. Blaming me, she claimed feeling unloved, and her cold demeanor since the beginning of the year had raised my suspicions. I broke the rule and talked to him, considering him a friend and part of the family. Despite his initial attempts to lie, I had the receipts and exposed the truth, learning more details from him than I did from her. Confronting her once again, I inquired about guilt or remorse, to which she only replied, "I don't know." When I asked her to remove his contact and stop talking to him, she said she was losing her soulmate and admitted always being attracted to him. During a weekend trip for her mother's birthday party, she confessed that she was hoping he would contact her to have an excuse to get away from me. This revelation was devastating, especially after 3 days with her family. On the drive home, she was texting him endlessly, and he finally replied, stating that she meant nothing more to him than someone who bought things, cleaned, and drove him where he wanted to go. At this point, she shifted to anger towards him and started fighting to keep me. What's something horrible you've witnessed as a child but did not completely understand how horrible it really was? When I was in the first grade there was this schoolmate named Mikey. He was a well-mannered kid who was always dressed to the nines. One day he got in trouble for something small in class, maybe talking when he wasn't supposed to, being out of his seat when he wasn't supposed to, or not following the typical rules. It was something he was bad to do, but at the same time it wasn't something one would get into serious trouble for either. The teacher kindly reminded him of the rules, that he would go to recess 10 minutes late and that she would inform his parents. Hoop hit the fan. He just completely broke down once he heard his parents would be told. He was crying profusely and screaming. He was uttering phrases like, "Please don't tell them. I'll have to drink hot sauce. I'm gonna hurt so much," and other phrases like those. The teacher tried to calm him down to no avail when she finally called for assistance from the principal's office. Once the person arrived to our room, the teacher went into the hall to talk to them. While she was out of the room, Mikey carried on with what us other first graders thought was a regular temper tantrum. I mean, we all had those. About 20 seconds or so after the teacher went into the hall, he calmed down a bit. He was wearing a tie that day and then proceeded to take it off. He then wrapped it around his neck and started to end himself in front of all of us. He was doing a good job too, as he was turning red and sweating pretty heavily too. As first graders, we all sat back and were like, wow, he's changing colors. We were surprised but not shocked by the actions taking place in front of us. We didn't go get the teacher from the hall because about a week earlier she was talking to somebody in the hall and we were bothering her with less important questions like, can we sharpen our pencils? Or can we color? She specifically told us not to interrupt her when she was talking to others because it was rude. So when this started happening we didn't, but I remember one or two students saying we should, but the majority reminding them of the no interrupting rule. Anyway, she runs into the room and is freaked out by what she sees. She yells at us and asks why nobody came to her and told her about this, and we reminded her, in unison, that we were not supposed to interrupt when she was talking to others. We were 6-year-olds and weren't aware of what was really happening with Mikey, so we thought the rules applied. I mean, he had just got in trouble for not obeying and this was happening and we didn't want to get in trouble. The teacher and the person that came to talk to her rushed him to the principal's office and we never heard from him again. Teachers of Reddit, what is the most depressing thing your kids have said? I did a month as a teacher assistant during work experience when I was in 6th form, and normally you stick with the same teacher all day, but there was a different teacher every day, if that makes sense. Anyway, I asked if for the whole 2 weeks I could stay with the same class, which got accepted, so there I was staying with the year 9B class, ages around 13 to 14. Throughout the time I treated them all as people, not as students. Having a joke with them while they got on with their work, etc. About a week in, one student, let's call him Oliver, suggested to the teacher I take out 4 to 5 students to continue work in another room, which was agreed on for every lesson from that point. Every lesson Oliver requested to go out to the other room, but obviously sometimes he couldn't. A further week passes and I speak to the headmaster about Oliver wanting to constantly go with me, and he suggests letting him go every lesson. He wasn't able to say exactly why. So the next few days Oliver continued to go to the other room along with 3 to 4 other students and got on with work while we all talked about different things during it. On the Friday of the second week, Oliver stayed over as he wanted to ask the teacher if me and him could have a one-on-one session for one lesson to help him catch up. The teacher instantly agreed but also couldn't say why. So on Tuesday, I invited him into a one-on-one session to help him with his literacy. As we got halfway through the lesson he looked up and asked me how old I am. I said I was 17, which I was at the time. He then asked how long until I'm 18 and I said still a good year to go, which he sighed at. I asked why and his reply always gets me. I've never had a big brother before and I live in care, I just wanted you to be my big brother, which was just the saddest thing I've ever heard. He said he has been in care for 10 years and every time he gets close a case of bad luck happens. It causes him to do bad at school and get terrible results and be constantly moaned out. I was the first person to treat him normally and not as a kid. Since that session he still continued to be a part of the group sessions and getting along with his classmates. As I approached my final day I knew it would be a tough one. I grew close to the whole class, but I knew Oliver would have a hard time that day, as this has been the first time he has had someone truly properly talk to him. The final lesson approached and he looked visibly upset. I knew something had to be done, so while a group session happened that day, the last 10 minutes I got Oliver in a room to talk to him. He didn't want me to go, even campaigning for me to get a job there during one assembly the previous week, and he asked if we could stay in contact. I said that would be unlikely as I wasn't close. I just gave him the best advice I could with a promise that if he ever needs someone to talk to, let the school know and they can get something sorted. So after the month was up I returned to 6th form, and with a couple years of pretty bad luck with no idea what I wanted to do. I got a message off Facebook from him a couple of weeks ago asking if I could come to his results opening. I agreed and we caught up, and when he opened his results it was as if my old child just opened their grades. He started to cry and thanked me and said words that I keep in my head whenever I feel down: you were the best teacher I ever had and the best friend I ever had. Now he is 18 and I really couldn't be more proud. The fact that I helped even just a single kid will always help me.
A stranger tells me smile, it could be worse, instantly regrets it. Last week, I was out and about, making a start on some errands I had. As I was walking, I was going through my long to-do list in my head, so I wasn't frowning, I wasn't smiling. My face was just in neutral. A man starts heading towards me. As we pass, he tells me, smile, it could be worse. I stop, stare at him for a moment, and then I say, my parents were in an accident. My mum died on impact. We're turning off my dad's life support tomorrow. The guy looked like a robot being suddenly shut down. His face fell. He looked like a deer in headlights. He stuttered and stammered. He was obviously trying to think of something to say, and when he couldn't, he turned around and speed walked away. My parents are both fine. There was no accident. But it annoys me when people think they have the right to dictate how people are feeling. and what expressions they make, especially when they don't know what is going on in their lives. It's unhelpful and patronizing. Imagine telling somebody who has just been given a terminal diagnosis, smile, it could be worse, or somebody who has lost a child, been laid off, or is otherwise struggling and in a terrible situation.
What are some great examples of coincidence? I was in my late 30s, 3 children, recently divorced, working 2 jobs, trying to stay afloat. My second job was that of a waitress and I worked a couple nights a week and Sundays. Not a lot of employees wanted the Sunday shift. We were on a major highway for beach traffic. Sunday traffic consisted of sunburned children who were cranky and tired, bad tipping, mostly because they spent too much on amusements, hotels and restaurants, and parents who were regretting having to return to work the next day. Sundays could be busy, but mostly, they were on the slow side. One Sunday, a family of 4 came into the restaurant and sat down: dad, mom, 2 children, 1 girl approximately 7 and 1 boy around 5. It was a slow day and a storm was approaching. The little boy was quite talkative and I found out just about everything they did the week before. They were the only table in the restaurant and ate dinner and relaxed while the storm passed. I should let you know I love rainbows. I sometimes feel like I'm a rainbow chaser. People like me know the look and feel when rainbows should appear in the area. As a matter of fact, my kids to this day call me when they see a rainbow. That being said, after the storm I noticed that look. Went out back and saw the most beautiful rainbow. Sigh, checked on the table and asked the parents if I could take their kids to see the rainbow. I could see the glance between them, probably wondering if I was a kidnapper, but that quickly passed as I described the sheer beauty of what was happening right outside the door. Told them we would be right out front and they could come too. They let the children go with me while they paid the bill. The little boy grabbed my hand and we walked out and sat down on the curb. By now there were 2 rainbows and working on a third. I explained a little science and the children were just amazed. They had never seen real rainbows, only ones in pictures. The parents came out and we all sat there and watched for a few minutes at the wonder of the rainbow. Another car drove into the parking lot and I knew this had to end because I was about to get another customer. We said our goodbyes. A year later, working one Sunday, I had a family come into the restaurant and sat down: dad, mom, 2 children, 1 girl and 1 boy 5. When I approached the table, the little boy jumps up and says to me, "Can you make it happen again?" I of course had no idea what he was referring to. The mom and dad explained they had been in the year before and their little boy told everyone how he met someone who could make rainbows. His sister kept telling her brother that it didn't work that way and there would not be any rainbow and he should just shut up. The young man was very convinced that I could indeed make it happen. I didn't know what to do, but I tried to explain as nicely as I could that I didn't think we would be able to see a rainbow that day. It was a beautiful sunny day. As I left the table, I could hear the little boy saying to his sister, "You just wait and see." Well, if you haven't figured it out yet, there was a storm that blew in really fast. The sky darkened and it poured for about 5 minutes and then all cleared up and what remained was a beautiful rainbow. Now you may call this a coincidence, miracle, sign from above or just damn amazing. All I know is there was one little boy who proved his sister wrong, amazed his parents and sat with me for a very long time on the curb calling me the rainbow maker. Just to let you know, I got a damn good tip. What's your family's disturbing secret? The only thing that was unusual about my family was that my parents always tied and locked my sister in her bedroom every night. They always told me not to question my elders, so I never asked. My parents were going out for my dad's birthday party in San Francisco and trusted me enough to not get a babysitter and to follow the same routine for my sister. "Now honey, remember to tie her to bed before 9:30 p.m. and lock the door," my mother said to me before following my father out the door. Then she turned to me with a straight face, "And do not, I repeat do not unlock that bedroom no matter what. Call us on the phone in the living room if there is an emergency." I turned the lock to the main door and then looked at my sister. The clock read 4:45 p.m. Only 5 more hours. Once the clock hit 9:25, I told my sister to go brush her teeth and head to bed. Once she told me she was in bed, I ran upstairs to tie her to the bed. When I went into her room, I froze. All the walls were scratched up, the windows nailed shut, and all the furniture was gone. Except her bed. Just a single bed in the middle of her room. Of course this shocked me because I've never gone into her room before. "Okay, Ally, go ahead and lay down," I told my sister. She laid down and I tied her up. How the hell could she possibly be comfortable? I left her room after but did not lock the door. I wanted to see if anything really happened. I went to my room shortly after and watched some TV to pass the time. Around 11 p.m., I started hearing growling. I brushed it off as it could have been my Rottweiler, Peanut, growling at someone walking past our front door. Then 12 o'clock a.m. hit. The growling grew louder and then I heard a door open. My sister's bedroom door. What the F was she doing, walking around 12 in the morning? I could hear her go downstairs and that's when the growling stopped. Everything went silent. Then I could hear Peanut start whining. I got up from my bed and slowly opened my door. As I was walking down the stairs, I noticed a trail of blood go from the living room to the kitchen. Right next to the end of the stairs was the archway to the kitchen. I peeked my head into the archway to see Allison eating something. "Allison, what are?" I stopped dead sentence as Allison turned around for me to see Peanut in her hands and mouth. She unalived him. And she was eating it. I ran upstairs and locked myself in my room. I grabbed my cell phone and hid under the bed. I called my parents' phone and waited for them to pick up. I called 6 times and got no response. I was out of luck, then my phone buzzed. A random number? "Hello?" I asked. "Oh God honey, I'm so sorry. Both of our phones were dead. What wrong? My mom responded, Mom, I forgot to lock the door and now Allison was just eating peanut. What do I do? I asked. My God, Blake. I knew you were too stupid. I want you to run to one of the bathrooms in the house and start running any faucet. My mom responded, Wait, why? I asked, Just do it. My mom said, now she had a deep, horrifying voice. Okay, sorry Mom. But when will you be back? Well, San Diego isn't far from home, so about a couple of minutes. My mom said, San Diego? I thought it was San Francisco. Maybe they just changed plans. Okay, love you, please hurry. I hung up. I ran to the closest bathroom, which was the one in the study room, right next to the living room. Lucky Allison wasn't there. I ran the tub and the sink and just waited. That's when I heard someone walking towards the door. Who's there? I said. Blake? Blake, it's Mommy, you can come out now. Everything is safe. Oh, thank God it was my mom. I was going up to unlock the door. Then the living room cell began to ring. It went to voicemail and that was when I heard my mom on the phone. Hey Blake, it's Mom. Sorry I didn't get your call, I lost my phone. Me and your father are leaving San Francisco now. It'll take a couple of hours, so please follow these rules. 1. Don't pick up any unknown numbers, Ally can trick you. 2. Don't make any noise, especially through the pipes, she can hear pretty clearly. 3. Lastly, do not listen to any voices, they aren't us. The message ended. Fortunately, I didn't open the door yet. Blake opened the door now. I could hear what must have been Allison but sounded demonic. She banged on the door for hours and all I did was sit down near the door and waited, crying and sitting in my own pee. That's when I heard a huge gunshot. It rung in my ears. The door opened and there was my parents. I hugged them tightly and said I was so sorry. They didn't say anything but just cried. Mommy, Daddy, what happened to Ally? I asked. We have no clue. Even a medical team couldn't come up with an answer. My dad said. It started when she was around 5, she would just bite us, then it turned into eating animals. Then around 7 she tried to unalive us. We didn't want to scare you, so we didn't tell you. I'm so sorry, honey. My mom explained, well, we have to make this look like an accident, my dad said. We all cleaned up the scene and made it look like a suicide. We also wrote a letter about how Ally felt pressured and wanted to end it because of it. Everyone believed it and now that's a little family secret. I'm mad at my husband for donating money to his ex-hookup with cancer. I'm a 38-year-old woman, and my husband, Johnny, is 39. We've been married for 2 years and have a 2-year-old baby. We recently bought a house and poured all our money into it. Johnny used to have a casual hookup situation with a woman named Jenny when he was in his 20s. They were never officially in a relationship, just occasional partners. Johnny is from England, and Jenny still lives there. She's married to someone Johnny describes as an alcoholic and a gambler, and she's unhappy in her marriage. Jenny is financially struggling, and she often reposts old photos with Johnny on Facebook. After her second daughter was born, she asked Johnny to be her daughter's godfather, and he agreed. I've always suspected that Jenny might be partially interested in Johnny for financial reasons because his family is wealthy. Our relationship is fine, but we've become like roommates. Johnny has a low sex drive and ed, which has affected my self-esteem. I'm a busy doctor, so I don't have time to take care of myself, and I've gained about 20 pounds from my baby weight. About a year ago, Jenny was diagnosed with metastatic cancer. She set up a PayPal for donations, and Johnny asked if he could donate money. He wanted to contribute $3,000 to match her goal, which I thought was too much given our financial situation. I suggested donating a smaller sum later, but Johnny wanted to do it immediately. He had recently bought himself a pastry from a bakery, which seemed hypocritical when he said we couldn't afford it. We closed on our house with only $2,000 left in our bank account, and I was scrimping and saving for our home purchase. A week after closing, I checked Jenny's PayPal and found a $3,000 donation under Johnny's name, which he hadn't told me about. He claimed it was his money from cashing out an investment account in England. I felt heartbroken and betrayed. Since then, our relationship has been strained, and I've lost trust in Johnny. I work extra shifts to bring in more income, and I'm still angry about his donation to Jenny. My in-laws and Johnny think I'm overreacting and have called me cold. Am I the a-hole?
My entitled sister-in-law tore my ear off because she didn't like my earrings and refused to pay for my surgery. Now I'm suing her for $50,000. Even when I was younger, I tried to convince my brother to find a better, sane woman to marry, but he didn't listen to me. As a result, my sister-in-law has always had a vendetta against me. She hates me with a passion and never tries to hide it. Whenever we go on family vacations or Thanksgiving dinners, I can always expect her to make an offhanded comment about me. She would insult the dress I'm wearing that day, call me an attention seeker because I wore makeup, and even go as far as to insinuate that I hate my family. I can remember times where she called me ungrateful and said that I was only taking advantage of my parents and my brother. Obviously, none of those things are true. At all those occasions, I got the urge to absolutely blow up at her and even attack her physically, but thankfully my husband stopped me. He always came to my defense and told my sister-in-law to cut it out. Thanks to him, I was able to avoid getting the reputation of a short-tempered and violent woman, while my sister-in-law is disliked by the entire family. However, she finally took it too far this time and forced me to respond in kind. It was my brother's birthday and I invited him to my new house. Although I call it new, we had actually moved in over 12 months ago. It's just that my brother never visited because of the rift between me and his wife. However, I really wanted to treat him for his birthday and therefore decided to tolerate my sister-in-law for just one day. After all, there was nothing she could do in the span of a few hours that would make me rage out, right? Anyway, he agreed to come over along with his wife for dinner. On the big day, I couldn't help but notice that my sister-in-law was dressed like she was going to a party with the president instead of just having dinner with family. I didn't make a comment on it and just invited them in, eager to show off my cooking skills. It was only 6 p.m., so my husband and brother decided to watch a football game together, leaving me and my sister-in-law alone. To my surprise, she talked to me politely and even praised my decision to host the birthday party. I was really happy, as I had prepared a cake and a full-course meal for both of them. However, her kind persona didn't last long at all, and she commented about how my earrings weren't matching with my dress. I was wearing a very casual blue gown with green earrings, and didn't see a problem with it. But for some reason, she was very insistent that I remove my earrings and wear new ones. When I kept refusing, she took matters into her own hands by saying, "Oh come on, those earrings don't suit you at all. They're probably just clip-ons, right? Here, I'll remove them for you." I have no idea why she thought they weren't the piercing kind. Before I even had the chance to respond, she closed the distance between us and yanked on my ear with her full strength. She was so forceful that half my ear was torn apart along with the earring. I screamed in pain and pushed her away while covering my bloody ear. My husband rushed in and immediately began attending to me. But the damage was so severe that he had to take me to the hospital. My sister-in-law was so spooked that she didn't say another word and quietly hid behind my brother. I was so much in pain that I kept crying and screaming the entire way to the hospital. I was scared that I would end up losing my ear, and would no longer be able to hear my husband's voice. Thankfully, the doctor told us that my ear would be fine after a small surgery to attach the part that was cut off and making sure there's no internal damage. Now, that whole time, neither my sister-in-law nor my brother called to check on my condition and asked if I was doing okay. But the real problem is that the insurance has refused to pay for my surgery. They are making some kind of excuse by saying that it was a domestic injury or something. I don't really get it. Anyway, after I had calmed down, I told my husband exactly what had happened and said that we need to make my sister-in-law pay for my surgery. He agreed and gave a call to my brother. I honestly thought that she would have the decency to apologize and agree to pay, but I was wrong. She had cooked up a completely different story to tell to my brother in which she was the victim. According to her, I had yanked my ear off myself and was planning on blaming her to extort money from them. It was a ridiculous story, but my dumb brother was so in love with her that he believed it. Something snapped in me when I heard her false story. If she had refused to pay but at least apologized and shown remorse for attacking me, I would have forgiven her. I had taken her abuse silently for years, but I wasn't going to do that any longer. I decided to make her pay for all her crimes. Now, that was an actual assault and I could report her to the police if I wanted to. But I decided to go to the extreme and instead file a lawsuit against her. My husband contacted a lawyer and we very quickly sent her a letter saying that if she didn't pay for the damages immediately, then we are taking her to court. But she once again told the same sob story, even hired a lawyer to fight the lawsuit. Thankfully, I have an ace up my sleeve. You see, our house is filled with security cameras, including the room where she yanked my ear off. So we have refutable proof of her wrongdoings, but I'm letting her lie so she corners herself and has no choice but to pay whatever amount I ask for. And since I have that trick, I decided to add pain and suffering and betrayal in the lawsuit and raise the amount to $50,000. This will work because she never called to check up on and never showed remorse. So her own toxic personality is going to bite her back, and I'm going to walk away $50,000 richer.
Former addicts, what made you get sober? My wife and I attended a seminar that was primarily for parents who had sent their kids to rehab, but other family members were allowed to attend. The basic premise was to assure the parents that it wasn't any one particular thing we had done and, in essence, wasn't our fault. It was run by the directors of the placement service and was actually pretty good. One of the exercises on the second day was that we got paired up with a partner and shared one of the things we wished we could stop doing and some basic circumstances that might cause us to act in that manner, and then the other person would act it out so we could see ourselves. I was 38 at the time, my son was 19, and I got paired up with a kid who was about 20 or so. My thing was that I got incredibly angry with my son when he would come home high and a huge shouting match would start, often involving kicking things or throwing things or slamming doors, etc., although no physical violence. He casually said, "You use, too, don't you?" I replied that I did, but that I was a responsible user because my bills were paid and I had a job, etc. So, he goes into his act and does a decent job, but throws in some remarks about do as I say, not as I do, which stung a bit. Later he tells me he goes to this meeting in town and that he's always there at the 7 o'clock meeting and invites me to come just so I can see what my son will be doing when he gets out of rehab. I agree. I show up at 6:55 and a meeting is just ending. I mention that I'm there for the 7 o'clock meeting and they tell me they've never had a 7 o'clock meeting. They have them at noon, 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and 10 o'clock. And, yes, I'm in the right place because I know this city and the streets and the adjacent businesses, etc. I tell them I'll come back at 8 o'clock and they beg me to not leave, but I assure them I'll come back. And I do, right at 8 o'clock, and I sit through the meeting and this kid never shows up. But, I listen to the others in the room and they're not anything like I expected addicts to be. They're normal, clean, average people. I know, but it's not unusual for people to picture addicts as homeless street people, and I've had my share of you're nothing like what I expected moments since then, too, who just let their lives get messed up by drugs. And I hear many of them say things with which I can completely connect. And, sitting there, I realize that, despite the fact that I paid my bills and had a job and a car and looked nice and all that shit, I was an addict. And I picked up a white key tag that night. That was July 8, 1996, and I've been sober since. My wife got clean 2 years later. My son has relapsed a couple of times and has had some fairly serious health issues, including 2 strokes from non-drug related congenital issues, but he's also been clean now for about 7 years. And here's the freaky part. Not one person in that group, nor anyone I've ever met in the NA community in the area has ever heard of this kid, and I've never run across him in any meetings anywhere. It's like an angel was sent to show me how messed up I was and tell me I needed to get my shit together, and then just disappeared. I leave itemized tips at restaurants to make up for my wife's embarrassing behavior. My wife and I dine out every once in a while, but not too often because of my wife's annoying habit, inherited from her family. She always complains, sends food back whenever she feels like it, even if it's absolutely perfect, and makes needless requests and substitutions, even though she doesn't have allergies or sensitivities. She is also extremely loud when making these complaints to the servers and will try her best to shame the server in this way in front of the whole restaurant. It can easily take 25 minutes for her just to order her own food, and sometimes I've already finished my meal by the time she gets her food because she sends it back, asks for modifications, complains that it's too spicy even though it was stated on the menu that the dish is extra spicy. Yes, she has done this exact thing, by the way. I know restaurant staff don't appreciate it. I've tried talking to her about this, but she doesn't see an issue with it. Anyway, we make decent money and we use our combined funds on dates and dinners together. I recently started writing what my wife does on the receipt and then calculating a tip, in addition to the normal gratuity to compensate. So, to a receipt I might add, complained about not having a certain beverage, plus $5. Asked literally 10 questions about a single menu item, plus $5. Asked for new drink because too much ice, then complained that the next drink didn't have enough ice, plus $5. Sent meal back, even though it was exactly what she ordered, plus $5. She didn't notice me doing it the first 2 or 3 times, but last night she noticed I was spending a lot of time writing a tip amount and asked why. I showed her what I wrote. She's been mad at me since, saying I'm embarrassing her to the staff. I told her she's embarrassing us both.
My son's girlfriend introduced herself as the one your son puts his schlong in, and I immediately kicked her out. My husband and I recently met my son's girlfriend for the first time. He's been crazy about her. They'd been dating for a year before he decided to have her meet us officially. What he's told us about her all seems great. She just got her degree, was enjoying her job, family-oriented, and so on. I'm honestly just glad he's happy with her. My husband and I don't think he's ever been this into someone before, so I feel pretty bad about what I did. Last weekend, he brought her over for dinner. By now, we'd been anticipating meeting her with how much our son had been gushing about her. How perfect she is, that she's the one. They ring the doorbell. We open the door. She looks exactly like her pictures, which is a great start. My son is grinning ear to ear, another great start. We invite them in. She accepts my hug and a firm handshake from my husband, and then she opens her mouth. I'm the one your son puts his schlong in. To be frank, I was appalled. I expected my husband to laugh, but this was just too much for me. Maybe I'm reserved, but of all things she could have shared about my son, she told us that. One look at my face and my husband knew how much I disapproved. Maybe I let my expectations get too high, and it's unfair to have them, but I reiterate, of all things to say to her boyfriend's parents, whom she'd never met, she chose that? My son was amused at first, but when he noticed my reaction his face dropped. I felt like he'd sold me the full package, everything he'd always been looking for in a girlfriend. I was too disturbed by the visuals it put in my head, and it translated into anger. I told her to get out, and I wanted to say more about how gross it made me feel, but I fortunately left it at that. My son didn't want to go, insisting I give her another chance, but I was too fed up and uncomfortable by this point. Even my husband, who's enjoyed his fair share of raunchy jokes, wouldn't let up. They left and I immediately felt guilty. This was something my son had really looked forward to, and I feel like I took that away over a dumb joke. I tried calling to apologize, but he hasn't responded. My husband thinks she's the one who should apologize. Update, 1 week later. Thanks for reaching out, everyone. My son got in touch with me. His girlfriend agreed to try again. We all met at a restaurant my son and his girlfriend chose. The first thing she said was an apology for what she said. I apologized for my reaction. We hugged. It was nice. She then explained how my son had convinced her a joke like that would land well, and that she wouldn't have said it if she didn't think we'd like it. According to my son, she was reluctant to open with any jokes at all, but they came up with that one together on the way over. She's a really sweet girl. She's actually very mature, too. I see why my son likes her so much. My husband and I really like her. We told our son to bring her when he visits. We look forward to seeing them again. Overall, I'm glad we could start over.
What is the most shocking thing someone has done in your house that they thought was normal? A boss told me, similar to Ruth Harvey's story, that they had visitors who let their young daughter roam naked and let go wherever she happened to be when the urge hit. This was a couple who were friends of his wife, and she'd been friends ever since undergrad days. My boss and his wife had visited their home a few times before they had a daughter, and vice versa. In his opinion, they defined the wild-eyed far-left Californian, and he never enjoyed the visits. High's own wife was more conservative than her friends, but it would often be 3-on-1 no matter what the topic was. He knew nothing about sport because contact sports are barbaric, they both favored full-on socialism and so on. But then they had the child, so there hadn't been any visits in a few years. Until one day when my boss's wife said they'd be in the area. Wouldn't it be great to get together? She also hinted that maybe he could overlook their very liberal views and crank up the grill if things weren't going too badly. They arrive and the daughter, about 3.5, is naked within minutes. My boss starts to say something when the other wife, the mom, says that they're raising their daughter to love her body and all three are often fully nude around their own house. My boss says something to the effect of, "Do you think it's a good idea?" when the other guy jumps all over him. That's why women are so put down. All most men think about is sex. How could you even think of sexualizing a 3-year-old? It's exactly that attitude we're trying to break here. She has no problem with her body, so it must be you. Clearly, he would not be cranking up the grill. Unfortunately, his own wife had never asked them to stay for dinner. He guessed he could survive another hour or so when the girl let go all over the hardwood floor in the dining room. She peed, she pooped and then she peed more, and then just walked away. Meanwhile, her parents, who saw the whole thing, continued on with their conversation. When it became clear that they weren't going to budge, he got up to clean up the mess. That's when both parents yelled out, "Don, not his real name, sit down right now. We are not going to have our daughter taught that natural bodily functions are dirty or bad." Now he'd had enough, so seeing that, his wife pulled him aside. He made clear that they were leaving right now, that they were going to pay to have the floor refinished. He never wanted to see or hear about them again and he had half a mind at least to call Child Protective. Evidently, the other couple sensed what was coming and so loudly said to the daughter, "We'd better leave now. These are not very nice people and we are better off without people like that around us." They did eventually send a check to have the floor fixed and he never called CPS.
What's the most hurtful thing you've overheard about yourself by accident? When I was in 7th grade I lived in a shitty podunk town in East Texas. I was weird and an ugly duckling. In order to fit in, I decided to become a cheerleader since all of them were popular and well liked at my school. I made the team, and considered all of them friends, even though they were mean to literally everyone who they didn't consider cool. One day, during a practice, the bases of my stunt, the people who hold you up, dropped me and I fell flat on my ass, which bruised my tailbone really badly. At our first game, we were on the sidelines and during a break I overheard our team captain laughing about how funny it was when her and the other base dropped me on purpose and that they had hoped I would be hurt enough to not be able to participate at the game. As a 13-year-old, it destroyed me, but in order to still seem like I was liked at school I didn't tell anyone about it.
Generally calm people, what made you lose your absolute crap that time? My son was maybe 8 months old and had recently diagnosed as profoundly deaf. Deaf kids will often inhale to make vibrations and noise that they can somewhat hear for stimulation. We were on pins and needles as I had just lost my job and our insurance and the cochlear implant surgery was going to cost us $170,000. We'd have to sell the house and one of the cars. We needed a break and our in-laws took us to the food court at a local mall. Our boy started to inhale and gasp. "He needs a beating." An obese 20-something said no so quietly to her friends at the table next to us. I rarely curse in public and am generally non-confrontational, but a stream of insulting profanity issued from my mouth for a good 10 minutes that would have put a sailor to shame. I found it couldn't stop and it got on the verge of Bukowski and poetry. I insulted her, her mother, her weight, and her pinched-faced friends. I launched into the smell of her twat, how obese she was, how she'd only be able to reproduce with a blind intoxicated moron with a death wish as she was uglier than the devil's a-hole on fire with the crap of hell. And it only progressed from there. Female Lee Ermey's Marine drill sergeant from Full Metal Jacket would have told me to tone it down a bit. I told her he was deaf and that we couldn't stop it and this was a goddamn food court in a pissant southern town filled with pissant inbred motherfucking hellspawn redneck ignorant mutant troglodytes that embarrass normal troglodytes. The food court was silent and all the eyes were upon us. And then it progressed from there. She got up and left crying. I can honestly say the whole rant was involuntary, like a puss-filled boil popping and draining in a torrent. I had never done anything like this before and have not done it since. I feel bad for her to this day. What disturbing rumor turned out to be true at your school? When I was a senior in high school, we had a new teacher join the faculty to teach health and home economics. She was probably about 26 years old and very, very attractive. Everyone was talking about the hot new teacher. As I was senior class president, I needed a new faculty advisor since my previous advisor of 3 years retired at the end of my junior year. About 2 weeks later the principal called me into his office and informed me that the new hot teacher was going to be our new class advisor for the rest of the year. As a result, she and I spent a lot of time together, at school and off campus, organizing and running myriad events to raise money for the class, plan the prom, field trips etc. Soon, the rumors started flying around that she and I were messing around. This was completely false. I can say she never acted inappropriately towards me or suggested anything to make me think she had plans for any type of physical or sexual activity. She was a fantastic advisor and always just that, a class advisor. I spent the rest of the year denying these rumors with friends, with teachers and with parents. I was even interrogated by my wrestling coach the day before the district championship match. She and I had a laugh about it at graduation as she had to face similar questions from other faculty as well as the principal. She confided in me that she had tendered her resignation but the principal would not accept it and said he believed her and would ensure the rumor was squashed. So I graduated and left for my plebe year at West Point, forgetting about the entire situation. At West Point the first year is called plebe year rather than freshman year. The first semester of my plebe year was moving along as it should with no unusual events worth mentioning until the final month. Then, in early December, the topic of my high school faculty advisor resurfaced. One night when I was studying, there was a knock on my door and the company tactical officer, a regular Army captain, walked in and told me to report to his office immediately as there was a phone call for me from the Dover Police Department. Now, I immediately assumed it was my brother playing some kind of twisted joke on me since he was a captain in the very same police department waiting for me on the phone. Since my TAC was standing right behind me, I answered the phone as we were taught. Cadet Kerwick speaking, how may I help you sir/ma'am? I immediately recognized the voice on the other end. It was not my brother but a close friend I had grown up with and known for over 15 years. He said, "Hey Steve, hope things are going well there, but I don't have time to chit-chat. I need to record this call and ask you some questions. Do you consent to being recorded and will you allow me to swear you in so that this is official and if anything you say is later proven to be false or misleading, you may be subject to criminal charges and a warrant issued for your arrest?" His name was Bill but we all called him Woody. I said, "Woody, is this some kind of a joke? Who put you up to this because I'm about to shit my pants as I have no idea what this is about." My mind was racing so fast trying to guess, counter-guess, and trying to process that I could potentially be kicked out of West Point for something I had no clue about as of that moment. Woody replied, "It's no joke and this is a very serious case we are investigating concerning inappropriate behavior between an adult and a minor or minors with regard to possible consensual or non-consensual sexual activities or sexual assault." That's when I knew exactly what this was about. I said, "Go ahead Woody, I consent and will answer any questions you have." So I basically had to repeat his words almost like being sworn in as a witness who was going to testify in court. The questions all focused on that hot, young class advisor I worked with during my senior year. They kept me on the phone for an hour asking every possible question imaginable and then asking those same questions again in a different way. I answered every one honestly and candidly, but at the 1 hour mark I was becoming agitated as it seemed like they were on a witch hunt and were going to keep asking questions until they got an answer they liked. So I spoke up and said, "Gentlemen, you can continue to ask me these questions in any order or format that you desire but I can assure you that my answers will not change because they are truthful and there was never one moment where Ms. X acted inappropriately in front of me. She was always completely professional and never even insinuated at something that would cross the line between teacher and student." Following that statement they had no further questions and told me they would contact me again if they needed to follow up or get additional details. My TAC could see I was visibly shaken so we talked for another hour and I told him everything about the situation. He never had to ask me if I was being truthful because every cadet adheres to a strict honor code that becomes part of who we are. That code states that a cadet shall not lie, cheat or steal, nor tolerate those who do. He told me that I handled things professionally and can hold my head high if I ever return home for a visit. And that was that. I went back to my studies and prepared for my final exams and went home for a short Christmas break. That's when I found out that my teacher, my class advisor, had been found guilty of having a relationship with someone in the current senior class. That relationship was sexual and he was a minor. Seems the student ran around bragging to everyone that he was doing it with the hot teacher. I don't know if it was true or if he made it up. What was true was that she was fired from her job and never allowed to teach again. She had to register as a SX offender for the rest of her life. She lost everything, family, friends, money, possessions and had to serve time as an inmate in a state correctional facility. If you ask me what I think, I don't believe it. I know the kid who was allegedly in a relationship with her. He was a complete jerk. Loud mouth, not smart, not smooth, not good looking and most of all, he was a liar and a storyteller who would say anything if he thought it would make him look cool. I had wished I could have tracked him down and interrogated him my way. My guess is things might have ended differently, but I never got the chance to run into him and the cards he laid were played. I ingested mold for a year. So I have one of the Keurig coffee makers. I use it every day to make hot chocolate. Well, it was cold last week as we just had a snowstorm so instead of having 1 cup of hot chocolate like I normally do, I had 3. So this required more water to be added to the reservoir. So I added the water and I noticed something black on the lid. It was mold. I looked inside and saw a lot more mold. Last year, I bought one of those fancy water filter kits for it and installed it. You're supposed to replace them and I even put an alert for it in my phone. But I set the alert to none so I never got it. So for the last year that water filter cartridge has been sitting in water getting moldy. Now, you're probably wondering how I never noticed the mold in the reservoir. Well, I'm short and have it at an angle in the kitchen so I always just use the hose from the sink to fill it up. My memory isn't great so I forgot I even had the water filter in there. I assumed by using the machine every day it would stay somewhat clean inside it. Sometime last year my husband told me he didn't want coffee from the Keurig anymore and he started using a regular coffee maker. I continued using the Keurig. He told me it tasted weird but it never bothered me. Around November, I developed a bad cough and that eventually turned into a sore throat, nasal congestion and pain, as well as daily headaches. Oh, and my vision became blurry. These symptoms just never seemed to go away, and I know now they're from mold exposure. I've since cleaned the Keurig, but I'm pretty sure I have an aversion to using it so I'll probably just get rid of it. It's been a week since I've had anything from the Keurig and all of these symptoms have disappeared. I got blowed by my best friend and I don't think his wife knows. Hi, I 23 at the time got blown by my best friend 22. We were drinking to celebrate me getting a new apartment. To do this we got drunk, as we have for years. Well, this night I got blackout drunk and could barely walk. We went to some railroad tracks near my place. Walking back I dropped the rest of our bottle, had to climb the stairs as I could barely stand. We get to my empty living room, I grab a pillow and fall asleep for a minute. When I wake up my friend is pulling my pants down. He then says I have a nice dick and blows me. I pass out again because I don't really remember it. After that the next thing I remember is me and him fighting and I'm trying to call someone and he keeps asking why and keeps trying to grab my phone and I keep pushing him away. I black out again and then wake up in the bedroom in completely different clothes. The next day I told him I don't remember anything and asked what happened, and he said nothing, that I just went to bed. The next day I was going to see a girl I was dating at the time, however I wanted to throw up. I felt so dirty and wanted my parts to fall off. The anxiety was overwhelming. She noticed, but I just said it was a hangover. I told myself it didn't happen. I immediately stopped drinking with this friend and didn't see him for 2 years. Then one day he tells me he is getting married, however didn't invite me or another mutual friend to his wedding, but we all did meet before the wedding to meet his wife. Seeing him still gave me very bad anxiety, and I really don't think his wife knows.
What was the #1 cheating scandal at your school? Students at my school are gonna put you in jail because of this well-kept secret they all hid. Our court system is one big lie. Chances are, you're probably much smarter than your lawyer. They just have a paper to show they listened. I had an honest academic career, some might say too honest, and yet I still came in last compared to every other student. I watched all these other people practically sleep in frats while I kept my head down in the library just to get lower grades than them because of their secret trick. For all 4 years I had zero clue what they did. Initially I thought that maybe it was a legacy thing and they were tipping off professors or making big donations. But that wasn't even the case. The kids' parents bunkered down on them and were all helicopter parents. There was no chance they were paying off the professors. I was keeping afloat for those first years of law school and I had a good thing going. However, my senior year was kicking me in the butt. I had tried to follow my previous study methods and personalized schedule, but I took on way more than I could handle in my final year. I thought I was going to be fine and I was up for the challenge because I wanted to make sure I was going to get into a master's program, but this was my worst mistake. I figured out way too early that I couldn't do it all. At the start of the semester, I could have never guessed things would get so bad that my GPA would fall down to a pitiful 2.5. All the other students seemed so confident, so focused, yet nonchalant. Meanwhile, I was drowning in my overwhelming new workload. Before I had time to catch my breath, I was damn near failing all my classes, and it was taking a toll on not only my mental health but my health too. I was doing everything I could to try and pull my pathetic grades up. All-nighters back to back, Red Bulls to keep me alert in class, studying in the library for 8 hours straight. I had never worked harder, yet my grades had never been lower. I started to lose hope completely. The more I tried to catch up, the further I fell behind. For every single test I took, I was the last person left by the end of the class. It was humiliating. It broke my spirit a little more each time I found myself sitting there all alone, watching the professor sigh and check their watch. I had gray, drooping bags under my eyes, and my appetite was suffering, so I started thinning out. I had never looked or felt worse in my life, but what could I do? Give it all up now? It wasn't an option, but this degree was going to kill me if I didn't manage to break into whatever superhuman mindset these other students around me seemed to have. Everything came crumbling down one afternoon after I got my 3rd D in one of my most challenging classes. That grade was the straw that broke the camel's back, and I just came apart when I saw that I had failed yet another huge test. I walked out of the library, slumped down onto a bench outside, and started crying. All the pain and stress I had been carrying since the semester started just poured out of me. I couldn't carry it anymore, and then, I was approached by an angel. I'm not a religious man to any degree, but I will always see that random stranger as my one guardian angel since she changed my life so severely. I was sobbing with my face in my hands, ignorant to anyone watching a grown man cry, when I heard a soft, "You okay?" I opened my eyes to see a gorgeous girl looking at me with concern. I wiped my eyes, snorted and mumbled out an unconvincing "I'm fine." That's when she sat down right next to me and said, "It's your grades, isn't it? When someone's crying around here, that's usually it." She got a chuckle out of me with that and then said she was going to let me in on the little secret that was going on around here. That's when she asked for my laptop, and I gave it to her, dumbly. I watched her open Chrome and search StudyBuddy before returning it to me. She told me the extension was the only reason the other students had straight A's since it gave them immediate answers to their assignments, and the top 10 abused it relentlessly. After she walked away, I took a better look at the extension and its features. I went home that night and thought about using the extension. I had been apprehensive at first since I was putting everything on the line if I got caught cheating, but I knew that if I didn't do this I would be kicked out and would never get into my master's. After using it to complete my homework that first night, by the time I was done, I could have picked my jaw up off the floor over how shocked I was at the difference it made. My nightly homework routine consisted of tears and typing, spanning about 4 to 5 hours every night, more if I had a project due that week. But that night, I ran all my assignments through StudyBuddy and was done in an hour. It was a total miracle to me. I remember getting the best sleep I've had in months because I finished my homework so early into the night. I had completely forgotten about how refreshing it felt to get a full 8 hours of sleep. The following week was as different as night and day compared to the stressful start of the semester. I used StudyBuddy for all my homework and projects, and it gave me hours of free time and stress relief that I hadn't experienced since starting the semester. All my worrying and all mental pain just vanished because of one mysterious girl's advice. In a week's time, I had brought up every single one of my grades from near failing to a perfect A. I stopped dreading test days since I could just have StudyBuddy take them for me, and all I had to do was show up to class. Everyone's laid-back attitude started to make sense to me. This was the mystery that was going on at my school, and I had finally been let in on it. Since I could use StudyBuddy for all of my busy work, I started directing most of my focus toward my most challenging classes. Without all the time and energy cleared up for me by StudyBuddy, I surely would have miserably failed my most challenging classes within the first half of the semester. After chatting with some other students, I learned this was how most of them chose to study. Being able to dismiss nightly homework deadlines or any menial quizzes with one easy click saved me loads of stress and time. After all my school's stress was lifted off me with one excellent recommendation, I started to use my free time to improve myself. At my worst, I didn't realize that fixing my grades would end up fixing me as a person. After my grades stabilized, I started to feel like myself again, and I thought about how much that random girl had utterly changed my life for the better. I started going to the gym and had more time to make friends around campus. I gained all the weight I had lost back, plus some extra muscle, and noticed girls checking me out more often. My self-esteem shot up with my grades, and soon enough I became part of a great friend group. It meant the world to have friends that understood all my academic struggles, and we were constantly sharing study hacks. As I branched out socially, I learned that nearly the entire student body all had their own form of AI cheating software. I was just lucky enough to find one that worked with Canvas, and just in time before I had tanked my grades any further. By the end of the year, my GPA was a gleaming 3.7, and I was overjoyed but not surprised when I got into my top choice for my master's. I remember scanning the crowd at my graduation, trying to find the girl who had basically solidified my successful future, all because my life. She took the time to introduce me to Study Buddy. I never saw her again, but I hope to run into her again one day, by some miracle, so I can finally thank her for the overwhelming impact her small act of kindness had on.
People who've had a brush with death experience. What's your most chilling I was seconds away from disaster story? Life is unpredictable, and sometimes, it can take us to the brink of disaster. I had such an experience, a chilling encounter that was a stark reminder of the fragility of life. I was on a solo hiking trip in the Himalayas, a journey that was both challenging and exhilarating. I had always been an adventure enthusiast, and this was my most ambitious expedition yet. One day, as I was navigating a particularly treacherous trail, I lost my footing. I slipped and started sliding down the steep, icy slope. I could see a deep crevasse ahead of me, and I knew that if I fell into it, I wouldn't survive. In that moment, time seemed to slow down. I was acutely aware of the danger I was in, and I knew I had to do something. With a surge of adrenaline, I managed to grab onto a rock and stop my fall. I was hanging on the edge of the crevasse, my heart pounding in my chest. After what felt like an eternity, I managed to pull myself up and get back on the trail. I was shaken, but I was alive. I had come face to face with death, and I had survived. That experience was a brush with death moment for me. It was a chilling reminder of the dangers of nature, and the thin line between life and death. It was a moment that I will never forget, a moment that made me appreciate the preciousness of life. That encounter with death changed my perspective on life. It made me realize the importance of living each moment to the fullest, of cherishing the gift of life. It was a story of survival, a story of resilience, a story that I will carry with me for the rest of my life.
I ruined my ex's marriage after he tried to get back with me. Am I wrong for sending my ex's wife the screenshots he sent me? So, me and my ex got divorced 4 years ago when he cheated on me with his now wife while I was pregnant with my daughter. My ex is a jerk to say the least. He didn't feel an ounce of remorse when he cheated and then married his mistress 3 months after the divorce. I, on the other hand, worked on myself for me and my daughter. I was a stay-at-home mom, but I got my master's and now doing a better job and in a better place. Since almost 2 years ago, my ex has been sending me intimate videos. The first time it was that he is not happy with his wife now, she does not love him like I did. He wants to divorce her and get back together with me. I felt sorry, back then I was stupid so I thought I could win him back. But the next time we met he ignored me. I did ask him about the messages. He told me he was drunk and there is no problem. The messages of such kind didn't stop. I asked him again and he got mad and said, "Stop trying to woo me, you know I divorced you because I was not happy with you. I am happy with my wife now." I didn't bring it up. He would make such messages like once a month. At that time I thought I would just ignore him, because I did not want to create more drama and look like the crazy ex-wife. He would text me complaining about his wife but then again post pictures with her and go on dates. This was so confusing. There was one time he went on a drive-in movies and he sent me a picture with caption, "I remember this place, I wish you were here." His wife was still visible in the pictures. The straw that broke the camel's back is when I started dating. I didn't tell him that I was, he must have known from our friends. The last message he sent me was that he wants to be with me. He cannot believe I am not with him anymore, that another man is sleeping on our marital bed. He wants me. If I say the word, he will leave his wife and be with me. I got tired of his crap, and I sent the screenshots of his messages to his wife and told her to control him. He must be drunk. I even sent those messages where he criticized her. The next day he bombarded me with messages that I ruined his marriage. I better fix this and tell his wife that this is all fake. He doesn't need this stress in his life. He called me and screamed at me that I was a petty B-word for what I did. That I am jealous of him being happy. I don't know. Should I just have ignored him? Because that didn't work the last time. My husband's best friend tried to assault me, but my husband didn't believe me. Trust is blind, and I guess I was, too. And I'm still trying to forgive myself for being tolerant when I should have lost my poop. My husband and I are both 30 years old, and we have been together for 5 years since we met in college. I still don't even really understand how we got together since we're polar opposites. Even when we met, we had completely different lifestyles and interests. I was president of robotics, and he was quarterback of our college's football team. He was a half-a-ed journal as a major. Meanwhile, I was a physics major who went on to get my master's. Either way, we met one day at a school event and hit it off. We had an instant physical attraction, and once we started hanging out, we only got closer and closer. We got married after college, and it was a little hard to adjust to. At first, our friends were very different people, and at first, our friend groups didn't match super well. My husband had been in a frat in college, and he stayed friends with a few of his frat brothers. I was not a fan of any of them, especially his friend Jerry. Jerry was a serial cheater. He always got belligerently intoxicated at every social event, and I just found him to be very obnoxious with an awful sense of humor. None of my husband's other friends are as tough as him, so I just put up with him as the years went on. But there's no way I could have prepared myself for the storm that Jerry would eventually rain down on my husband and I's marriage. As I said, one of Jerry's habits was getting ridiculously intoxicated at every single social event that I ever saw him at, which included dinner parties and barbecues that my husband and I would host at our house. We have been hosting for about a year now, and despite Jerry getting rowdy, he never caused more of an issue than maybe breaking a couple wine glasses here and there. Yet this all changed the last time my husband and I had our friends over. It's getting colder where we live, so we wanted to have one last backyard barbecue before the cold season started. The night came, and everything was going well. Everyone was having fun, and my husband was showing some friends his record collection in the other room while I was bringing out some more finger food from the kitchen. I was totally alone in the kitchen as I arranged the new platter, and I thought the rest of the guests were in the backyard. But to my surprise, Jerry walked in. I was holding the tray of food with both hands, and I politely asked him to pardon me so I could get back out to the party. He just kept standing in the doorway, staring at me with this creepy, inebriated glaze over his eyes. As soon as he didn't answer me or move out of my way, an intense wave of panic washed over me. I just didn't like the way he was looking at me. And the next thing I knew, he was taking a step towards me, so close that his chest was touching the tray.
I slept with my girlfriend's mom 2 years ago. I can't tell her because I know she'll dump me and it'll probably end her parents' marriage. So let me first just say, I'm not the one in the wrong for this, but I have to say it somewhere, it's eating me alive. 2 years ago when I was 19 I met this woman while I was working as a personal trainer. She was in her 40s and looked like a 25-year-old. She took an interest in me and invited me out a number of times and we had made love a few times. After one of our meetups she said it was wrong for someone of her age to be with me because I was too young and changed gyms. My girlfriend and I have been together for just under a year. She's amazing and I love her so much. 2 months ago I met her family for the first time and it was a shock. Like she took me to the house where I had hooked up with a woman and I felt like I was being pranked. Before I see her mom it hits me. I have a type and they both fit that type so it makes sense. I've been hooking up with a single mom and I'm now with her daughter. Then her mom and dad pop out and we both almost shit ourselves. I meet her parents. They've been married for 20 years. I realize I had been a married woman's boy toy. I feel incredibly ashamed. Later that week her mom finds my number and tells me that I can never speak of what happened. She says that my girlfriend will hate me forever because I'll be the one who broke up her parents. So now I'm stuck keeping this secret. She invited me to spend Thanksgiving and with her family, and since my family is 1,000 miles away and I already told her I don't plan on going home, I don't really have an excuse to not go. So now I'm going to have to sit there at a table and enjoy Thanksgiving dinner with the woman I had an affair with, her husband, and her daughter whom I am now in love with. I'm effed. I despise my parents because of this. I, 24, was always ignored by my parents when I was younger. My mom would always favorite my sister because she got top marks on everything. But don't get me wrong, I got good grades as well, mostly B's and A's. My sister, 20F, went to a private school funded by my parents of course, while I had to rack up 1,000s of student debt just to go to college. My sister always got everything, whether it was new shoes or the latest iPhone, whatever it was she got. When I was 16 my parents helped me with my dream PC, but when my sister found out about this she had a meltdown. She said, and I quote, "Why does he get everything that he wants?" Yes, she said that and stormed off to her bedroom. When her birthday rolled around she was expecting the latest iPhone and a new MacBook Pro for school. But she got was more than that. She got 2 MacBooks, one for home and one for school. She also got an iPhone 11 Pro Max with 1 terabyte of storage. Which to her seeing this she said, "OMG, you got the wrong color." I was shocked and they went back to the store and got her the right color. I had never gotten anything like that before. But that's just the start. Whenever it was my birthday she would beg to blow out the candles and open my presents and cut the cake. This was on my 14th birthday. My grandpa was shocked. My grandparents are strict on this, so to say they were shocked is an understatement. He then told me to leave the room and oh my did my grandparents let them have it. And those are just 2 of the many things that have happened. The time when this happened was just 2 years ago. 2 years ago was my sister's graduation and she was spoiled by gifts from friends and of course my parents, and bear in mind they didn't even come to my graduation because I'm not making them proud. When my sister got called up on stage my parents had paid, yes you heard that, paid people in audience to cheers and clap for my sister to make her feel special. I was so mad by this that I got up and left. When my parents got home they called me and said, "How dare you leave in the middle of your sister's graduation?" And that's when I snapped. I told them that why would I stay if they paid people to cheer in the audience and that they always left me out. They always brought my sister everything so my sister would never have to work and just focus on school while I had to work while in school if I wanted anything. That my sister got whatever she wanted even if it was on my birthday and that they never noticed me apart from my birthday. After I had said that she was quiet and I heard my dad get past the phone and he scolds me for talking to them like that, and that he heard the entire thing because my mom has the phone on speaker. That's when I said to him that I absolutely despise them and that they were bad parents and that I don't like them. That was 1 year ago and my mom contacted me out of the blue saying that my sister needed money and they had found out that I had gotten a lot of money from investing and working as district manager for where I live. They proceeded to ask for money to help my sister buy a house. I was confused and asked why. They said, after all we did for you and you're asking why we are asking for money from you? And I said to them, after all you have done for me? You made my sister do nothing while I had to do everything, and I hung up. This was 3 days ago and I'm not answering their texts or calls begging and then getting mad at me. I honestly don't know what to do. If you have any advice then please tell me. Employers and managers who had to fire their best employee, what happened? Had a guy who would work his ass off daily inputting data into spreadsheets, would come in, put in solid hours of actual work, not goofing off. He would literally get 4 times as much stuff done a week as anyone else in the office. After 3 weeks straight of this, other people start to take notice and occasionally ask him to help them out when they are behind, and he obliges. This gets worse and worse, and eventually people are basically just walking all over him while they spend all day Facebooking and whatnot, because he won't say no if they ask him to help with their work. The dude just keeps trucking through though. About 4 months into working there, it's gotten to the point where you can hear the extra cunty girls talking about leaving early and not getting in trouble because he will just do all the work for us if we ask anyway. Well, the guy goes into the boss's office, and I work right next to it so I can hear more or less the entire conversation. I am paraphrasing, but it went something like this. I would like a raise. I am doing way too much work for how much I'm getting paid. Everyone else who works here is so damn lazy. I even have people making jokes about how I will do their work for them and they will get paid for it. Well, name, I can sympathize with you, but you have to understand, I can't just give you a raise. If I give you a raise I would have to explain to everyone why you got a raise and they didn't. You could tell them it's because I'm doing half of their work for them while they look at stupid memes. I'm sorry, name, it just wouldn't work out well. Well then, is there any positions available above mine that I could apply for a promotion to? I don't think we can really look into a promotion this early and you working here. We would need time to properly evaluate your work ethic. Seriously. You seriously just said that to me. I'm not going to break my back doing an entire office's work for a company that doesn't give 2 shits about me. You and this entire office can go F themselves. He walks out of the office fuming mad and yells, hey everyone, boss, just denied my raise, so no more leaving work early for any of you lazy F heads, cause I fucking quit. What's the most disrespectful thing a guest ever did in your home? When I was in my late teens, maybe 19, my dad invited his brother and his new mistress turned wife and her 2 brats to our house. We had 2 cats, but realistically they were my cats because I spent the most time with them, loved them, and took care of them. I didn't really fit into the conversation, being so young, so I hung in the living room while the older adults were in the kitchen. My uncle's new wife, I can't bring myself to call her aunt, kids were going nuts over my cats. They were 2 boys, 9 and 7, both with behavioral problems. They could not control themselves at all. They did not have manners or any regard for things that weren't theirs. So I resigned myself to watching them, because I didn't trust the 2 little shits around my cats and their mom, and my uncle sure weren't keeping an eye on them. I even made sure to gently warn them, something along the lines of be nice and gentle, or you'll spook them. So these brats drug all the cat toys I had out and start going crazy trying to get reactions out of my cats. Most cats don't appreciate a lot of upfront energy like that, they're not like dogs. So my cats mostly just stared in bewilderment or ignored them. Then I watched one of these little shits reach out and slap my tortoiseshell cat across the head to get her to look at him. It was the 9-year-old, who damn well knew better for sure, and he didn't hold back in his swing. My poor girl was bowled over by it. I was pissed AF. I dragged him up off the floor and told him to leave my cats alone, then effectively banished him and his brother to the kitchen for their lousy guardians to watch them. He's lucky I didn't smack him. I've never hit a kid, but that would be the thing that drove me to it. After that I made it clear to his parents that their kids weren't welcome at the house anymore. My mom and dad, who also weren't fans of the less than behaved brats, didn't dissuade me. A month later, the 9-year-old pulled the same harassment towards my grandmother's 2 cats. Her orange tabby, a sweet little shy girl who was nervous around almost everyone, was terrified out of her mind because the 9-year-old was chasing her around my grandparents' house. Room to room, he chased her out of all her normal hiding spots that she retreated to when she was overwhelmed. I've never seen that cat as scared as she was. So naturally, I stepped in because my grandmother was too nice to tell her new daughter-in-law's kids to settle the F down. He played outside after that. To me, there's just nothing more disrespectful than mistreating the pets of your host. Animal abuse in any form is disgusting, but they're a part of the family, they should be treated as such, not like living breathing toys or entertainment to throw and break. Ugh. What is your naughtiest secret? I am married to my ex-GF sister. I used to visit my girlfriend's home as she represented me as a friend to her family. The day I looked at her sister, I got a crush on her. I love my GF, but deep inside I fall for her beautiful sister. I did nothing except find an excuse to go to her home and have a glimpse of her beautiful sister. Slowly she got to know me and we started talking normally and became friends. I never told my GF about my crush on her sister. Slowly time passes and my GF planning to go abroad for higher studies. She told me about it and I replied fine. She went away abroad and we continued with a long-distance relationship, but it was not working as we both have physical needs, as we were already having intimacy in relation. So one day we broke up. Now the time came and I proposed to her sister, and to my good luck she accepted my proposal. I was in seventh heaven. Now we were GFBF and slowly we became physical, but this time I am so much in love that I want to marry her. My ex-GF was still overseas as she got a job there after higher studies, and my relationship with her sis was top secret. She visited India once before my marriage, but I met her as a friend, as her family also knows we are friends, and her sister also hit our relationship and we used to behave as friends also. My ex-GF went back and her sister asked me for marriage and I agreed. Both parents met and all agreed, and then my ex-GF came to know about me with her sis, but she didn't say anything as she knew that I am not a bad guy. We broke up with mutual consent. So we got married, and only my ex-GF and I know that we were in a relationship once. The interesting part is that we went on our honeymoon to that country where she works and we stayed there at her home. We are having awesome intimacy at her home and she listens to our voices, which she used to tell me and say please be gentle with my sister, and I replied that I know how you enjoy intimacy with me. For that she laughed and asked who is better at bed, me or my sis. I replied both with a smile. For that she smiles and kisses me and says I miss you but I can't be involved in intimacy with you anymore. I said who asked you for it? I have your sister now. For that she got jealous and next night she waited for our voices to be calm, and after that she called me to come to his room. I went to her room and to my surprise she was naked, smiled at me and asked are you done? I said even if I am not, I will not F you. She was surprised and I came back. We came back from our honeymoon and she got married last year. Now we talk like simple friends. I found an inanimate object to replace my girlfriend. I consider myself an alpha male. A true gift to women. I'm the protector and always make sure to try provide for my woman. I've always seen women as just things that are here to satisfy me and fulfill my fantasies, whereas I exist here to take care of them, as their little female brains can never comprehend the amount of work it takes to be a true man. Well, I had a girlfriend. She was a feminist, claiming women this women that whatever. I was the one working in Burger King providing, not her. I don't know what she was blabbing about. It all came to a head in an argument where I stated the only reason I keep her around is for neck and intimacy. She got very upset and told me we needed a break. During this break, I was tempted to rub one out due to her no longer giving me dome. Of course I contemplated committing rope and getting my way that way, but as a good man I decided not to. Instead I bought a magic egg, from Lover's Pulse. It's a top-rated intimacy toy that makes you feel like you're getting head. This beauty arrived and I used it to help me rub one out. I tried it and let me tell you, this thing was up there with some of the best blowjobs I've ever received. And let me say I'm a tall boy with a snap score of 1.5 mil, so that should explain my experience with getting neck. There and then, I called my girlfriend and told her the break is up, we're done. I have been single ever since and getting pleasure from my magic egg. What is your most embarrassing moment? I'm a 27-year-old male with a V card and a pretty bad self-esteem and anxiety issues. I find it extremely hard to talk to females, however I have recently been talking to this one girl at my gym and it has been going well. I even told her I have a V card despite my age. She is 18 and very mature for her age. She comes over to my house regularly, and the other week when watching a movie she asked for a leg and back massage. Soon as I touched her feet I got a stiffy. She must have noticed and started putting her leg and her feet on my soldier. We ended up not doing anything intimate because I released in my pants a few minutes later. I'm not sure if she noticed though. Last night she needed someone to go outfit shopping, so I went with her and gave her my thoughts on her outfits. She kept doing poses and asking about how her bum looked. Later we went back to hers just to chill. When we got in she changed into what she bought. This happened in front of me, which I found odd. She must have sensed it because she asked if I was uncomfortable. She went to her room and changed back into the clothes she was wearing before. When she came back she asked for another back massage, but this time she wanted me to sit on her bum as that's how it's meant to be done. She then just straight up said, "Can you massage my butt?" This is where panic set in, but I composed myself and did it without saying a word throughout the whole thing. After the massage she asked, "How were you uncomfortable with me getting changed in front of you but you didn't mind that?" She then got changed in front of me again. Turns out some lotion got on her sweatpants. At this point I didn't mind and kind of watched a little without being too weird about it. After she got changed we went back to mine. She went to the fridge and opened without asking. I commented, "Well, you're comfortable." She immediately replied, "Well, you were comfortable massaging me." I didn't know how to respond to this, so I stupidly said, "Well, you're flat anyway." Start an account? Enjoy those divorce papers and being kicked out. Who just decides to sell amateur corn behind their spouse's back? I'm so mad about it. The part that's the most infuriating is she doesn't understand why I'm angry. It's not like I'm cheating on you. You're talking to tons of horny men and selling them pictures of your naked body. How is that not cheating? I asked her if she'd be okay with my talking to women online and sending them pictures of my PP. She said that's different. How is that different? I feel like I'm going insane. I told her I wanted her to stop and she said it's not up to me. I'm consulting with my attorney today and he's in the process of drafting up divorce papers. We had already had our fair share of issues we were working on, but this is my final straw. And to think that I'm just done. We have been in marriage counseling for months, so I'm not just throwing away the marriage because of this. We've been having problems that I've been trying to work through for a long time. Her being unfaithful and prostituting herself behind my back is my last straw and ultimately where I'm drawing the line. We also are not short on money, so she isn't doing this for financial reasons. I make really good money now. She also makes decent money at her job. I don't know what her motivations for her whorish behavior are, and frankly, I haven't asked. I have given my lawyer proof on her infidelity and all of the relevant information about our finances, and once he drafts it up with what I think is fair, a clean split of assets based on who owns them and who paid for them, I will present it to her. If she does not agree, we can take it to court. I also took the day off from work today and hired a locksmith to change the locks on my house, purchased and paid off by me before the marriage, and have changed the alarm and garage codes, and I'm in the process of separating her belongings. Essentially, I'm kicking her out. Given the circumstances, I don't feel bad about this. Edit. Later that evening, I even saw this twig 16-year-old kid with geeky glasses pull up to my house, and had the nerve to ask if he could have a quick session with my wife. I pretended to invite him in, and then I knocked him the F out. He never came back after that. I crushed my ex-wife's hopes after she cheated on me. Bit of background, I'm 36M as of now. The characters have been a bit altered by their names. Rebecca, my ex-wife, now 34, James, my collage buddy and the guy Rebecca cheated on me with, Saladin, my other guy friend, Lisa, Saladin's cousin. So Rebecca and I were what you call college sweethearts. We survived college and the hardships of life. Got married in our early 20s. I was 25, she was 23. Ever since we got married, things were rocky. Not from the start, but situation-wise. I was in medical while she was an accounting major. There were things that was okay with me but was not with her. Despite being married, she acted like she was a free bird. She was. It's a good thing, but there was marital neglect from her side. 2016, she joins James' company as an accountant because it pays well. I was happy because hey, he's a buddy of mine. Slowly she started to complain about things that were in place. She didn't like where we lived, had problems with everything I did. She did not like the food she used to. I'm a great cook and she loved my foods. Our fights intensified by a margin where she would call me names. I'm good for nothing. She earned more than me. Coming to this part later on, drastic turn was here that Rebecca and James were hanging out with our set of mutual friends. I got the word of it and it seemed off. I confronted both of them, to which they both said it was a sudden plan and I was in field. Coincidentally, it happened on the same day I was out of city. They might have planned it beforehand, which I'm not sure of. 2017, the year my marriage blew up. So I was sure there was something because my bedroom became effing dead one. I was increasingly paranoid, and whenever I tried to address things I was turned down. Now I'm not a saint. I constantly yelled at her to tell me what was going on because there was just something off. Your favorite person rarely talks or does stuff with you and they claim it's nothing. Does this sound okay? It was also the year we were at our peak financially because our debts were paid off. My friends and I decided to open up a medical shop that provided medicine shop as a side venture. So one of the friends was Saladin. He proposed that we celebrated at a pub. When we go there, I notice a girl that looks exactly like Rebecca. She was dancing with another man and it was quite dark. I get a closer look, lo and behold. It's Rebecca and James, dancing hand to hand. I wasn't much bothered about it because hey, they're friends. I was here with my colleagues and she was there with her. But it was bothering me. I decide to send her a text asking where was she. She's usually on her way home at this time. She told me she was already at home. Now that was a red flag. I told her to stop lying because she wasn't. I could clearly see her that she was getting paranoid and told me she was on her way. She left the pub afterwards. That night I asked her about James. The look she gave me was as if she saw a ghost because she was not expecting that question. That look was what that told me something was definitely up. If you ask your so about a friend, they should act normally, but the way she acted was abnormal. That night itself I snooped her phone. Curiosity was alive in me. The password was changed so I couldn't see the phone. The next day, I saw her password and snooped it. There were hundreds of thousands of texts right there. Countless inappropriate pics, calling him daddy, degrading comments. My wife and I made a vow to each other that if there was ever anything we needed to explore, we would be transparent to each other. She broke that vow too. She confided about him how much thrill she felt that night at pub. I went through everything. What hurt the most was she herself told me if one of us ever got bored of the other or needed to spice things up, we will let each other know. She destroyed everything. I couldn't look at her the way I used to. Anymore. I cried the night and confronted her stupidly without any evidence the next morning. She yelled at me and stormed out after telling me I was abusive and insane. She told all our friends that I was abusive. That afternoon, they created a messenger group where everyone ganged up to troll me. When she came home that night, she told me she was in love with James and wants a divorce. I told her to talk first, but it turned into her berating me. I yelled at her and she called the cops. I was asked to spend the night elsewhere. I went to my sister's, and when I returned the next morning, James' car was here. He spent the night here. There was nothing needed to explain. He was doing it on purpose. Hell, she was doing it on purpose. I went to see a lawyer. As we did not have a prenup, she already filed a complaint about me being abusive. It didn't look good for me. Not one did she try to apologize. Not one did she try to make amends. Our country law doesn't count infidelity as a fault. So even with that, she's entitled to half of my everything. But her complaint can sew me up. Few days after that, where I was still living with my sister, I tried contacting Rebecca, but she won't reply to me. Rebecca hit me up telling me we should get divorced. That's it. 12 years of relationship, 4 years of marriage, and she ends it with a text. I was effing convinced that James was taking my place. She handed me the divorce papers. Everyone from our friend circle was convinced that I was an effing abuser and James was her savior. She did the right thing to cheat on me. We were officially divorced during the start of 2018. She was already dating James open during our divorce. He was her life. I lost my job, my house, my reputation in her little affair. I had to change the city to move someplace else to restart again. Saladin helped me massively in that fresh start. He got me a decent paying job that was nowhere like my previous one, but it was better than the rest. We became close buddies while I was working to earn back what I had. Dating life was over for me. I just couldn't trust anyone. It was a complete NC between me and Rebecca. Last I heard was she moved in with James. They were doing great. Check out The Insane Revenge.
My slightly overweight daughter said that I'm fatphobic for taking her to a doctor/dietitian. It has been 6 months and I'm incredibly proud of my daughter. She has dropped 35 pounds and is now 240, and seems to show no sign of slowing down or wanting to stop until she gets to a healthy weight. The changes we made started on day one of this journey for her. We did a lot of research and approached weight loss in the healthiest manner possible. We started out by having my daughter join me in my beginner-level home workouts just to get her moving and active. We also made heavy changes to the diet and figured out what works best for her. We initially started with calorie tracking, and although it gave results, my daughter said the mental strain of seeing food as a number was very hard on her. So we made a change. Currently we are sticking to mindful intuitive eating, with little hacks such as eating dinner out of smaller plates to control portion sizes. We have also made simple yet effective changes, such as replacing 20% ground beef with 5% ground beef, starting to use 1-calorie spray instead of olive oil, and eating veggies with dinner each night for less calories but to keep her satiated and not hungry. I have to say I am incredibly proud of my daughter for doing all of this. She has started feeling a lot better, has started going to a small local and quiet hotel gym, and to be honest, she seems happier in general, which is my main concern as a mother. Last week she broke down crying to me and apologized for everything. She apologized for letting herself go to such a point, apologized for calling me fatphobic when I was just trying to help. I cried with her and told her it's okay, that I'm so proud of her.
Waiters, what Valentine's Day disasters have you witnessed? I saw a couple have a full-blown argument in the middle of the restaurant. The woman stood up, took her ring off, threw it at him and walked out. The man continued his meal, had dessert and then paid the bill, left a pretty big tip for the inconvenience and left. 2 failed marriage proposals on the same Valentine's Day. The first one simply said no, I can't do this, and walked out. The second one stared like a deer frozen in the headlights for an excruciating 30 seconds before muttering, let's talk about this later. They stayed for the rest of their 6-course V-Day special dinner, eating and making painful small talk. It was like a movie. I was bartending at an Italian restaurant, not a fancy one, but still, and it's pretty much full of Valentine's dates. A guy walks in and sits at the bar by himself, looking pretty down. He asked for a whiskey, so I poured it, told him it was on the house because he looked like he needed it. He proceeds to tell me his story. He had come to the city to surprise his girlfriend for Valentine's, about a 5 hours bus trip between cities, and he sure surprised her. She was in her dorm room effing one of his friends from high school. He didn't know what to do, so he just walked into the first place that sold alcohol. I spilled as much whiskey as he wanted and watched the Raptors with him. Never saw him again. It's cliché, but it happened.
I went through my boyfriend's phone and found hundreds of photos of my best friend. Please help. Let me just start off by saying that as awful as it sounds, I still love my boyfriend with all my heart and I want to do everything I can to be able to work through this with him. My best friend has always been much more attractive than me, and the guys I get involved with always seem to be attracted to her to some level. Honestly, after years of this happening over and over again, I just begin to expect that the guy I'm with is going to crush on my best friend at some point after he meets her. This is why I will usually wait a long time to introduce my boyfriend to my best friend, since I know that they will probably get fixated on her just like all my other boyfriends in the past. For context, my best friend is extremely beautiful, like supermodel level beauty, and it's not a mystery why every guy that she interacts with gets so entranced. Anyway, I have been dating my current boyfriend for about 10 months now, and I really believe that he is the love of my life. I've never had someone be so kind and attentive and loving to me, and after almost dating for a year I figured I trusted him enough to introduce him to my best friend. I should have assumed that all men are the same, and I don't even know why I'm surprised after finding out what I did. We went to dinner with a bunch of my friends and I introduced my boyfriend and my best friend for the first time. His eyes got wide and he made a comment to me that my best friend was really pretty. I just said yeah and rolled my eyes, but ever since that night he began being really secretive with his phone and I started to get suspicious. I wasn't suspicious that he was talking to my best friend, since she would never do that to me, but I was feeling insecure with his behavior either way. I thought he might have realized that he could do better than me and he was trying to cheat on me, maybe on dating apps. All of these anxieties just got to me, and the other night I went through his phone while he slept. I had learned his passcode by looking over his shoulder, and what I found in his phone was truly disturbing. I opened his photos to find literally hundreds of photos of my best friend. There were so many screenshots from her Instagram as well as secret photos that he had taken of her from far away at the dinner where he met her. I thought that things couldn't get weirder until I found photos that had only been on my phone, meaning that he had gone into my phone just to find extra photos of her. It stung so bad to see that he had sent himself photos of me and her from my phone and cropped me out of them just to get a better look at her. Like I said, this kind of thing has happened to me before in the past, but never to this level. But I just can't bring myself to want to break up with him. Even though I know that this is some really sickening behavior, it doesn't change how I feel about him, and I'm not ready to give him up even after discovering this. What I do need advice on is how to deal with this within my relationship. I know I have to confront him on this, but I just want it to be as healthy of a conversation as possible and I have no idea where to start.
Redditors who have cut family members off from their lives, what was the final straw for you? I had been in the hospital for over a month, nearly dying from a rare disorder. My dad had came and spent time with me almost every day. Where is my mom? Not even a phone call. When I finally got out and was at home, I called her to update on her on what had been going on with me, and she dominated the conversation. She somehow made the entire situation about her, and how worried she was, what she would have done if that happened to her, etc. My 2-year-old ran up to me and was hugging my leg, and as I looked down into the eye of my baby I realized I couldn't even imagine if my baby had just gone through what I did, not visiting, not calling, and making every conversation about me. That was pretty much the last time I ever talked to my mom. My sister had already cut mom from her life, and that moment was when it dawned on me mom really doesn't care about us, she doesn't actually love us. A loving mother would never have treated their children the way that woman treated us.
I refused to engage in my girlfriend's rope fantasy, so she hired someone to rope her and is now traumatized by the experience. Her friends are now trying to convince me to stay with her. I met my girlfriend 7 months ago and instantly knew she was mentally ill, which worked perfectly for me as I had always liked the mentally unstable girls. Seriously, my first ex had schizophrenia and my second ex had BPD and anger issues and swung a knife at me once. Anyway, the first ever date I went on with my current girlfriend was blissful. She told me she had no dad and talked about her home life in a very open manner, letting me know she was an open book. The more she talked about her childhood trauma and lack of a father figure, the more green flags I saw. I ended up asking her to be my girlfriend on the 4th date and she said yes, and so we started dating. Well, 2 months into the relationship I witnessed just how crazy she was, as she started tracking the mileage on my car to ensure I wasn't cheating on her. At the time I took this as a sign of someone who actually cares about me being loyal. I knew that this was a sign of her being crazy, but that was hot to me. Well, around 4 months into the relationship she opened up to me about some of her intimate fantasies. This girl was an absolute animal. We did knife play, hot wax, masochism and sadism, and it always seemed like she wanted me to inflict pain on her during the deed. This was hot to me, and she seemed to really enjoy it too, as according to her the childhood trauma has made her enjoy these things. However, our intimacy life took a drastic turn around a month ago when she came to me with a fantasy she had. I didn't know what to expect, as just the week before she had shared with me her idea of getting tied down and tickled as something fun to try. Well, she told me that she really wanted to be roped. I just looked at her, and she went on to repeat herself. She described in detail how she wanted it to happen. She wanted me to approach her in public, kidnap her, bring her back to our house where I would immobilize her and rope her over and over. Would I be the a-hole if I didn't give up my honeymoon villa to my grandparents? My family is Asian, my husband's side is white. My husband and I got married and are treating his side of the family, and my side to a 1-week all-expense-paid vacation to Bora Bora as a pre-family honeymoon before going off on our real one. We were able to rent out half a side of the bungalows and only one villa was in that section. My husband and I took the villa. The bungalows are a 1,000 square feet 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, and outdoor space type of deal. We made sure everyone was accommodated for and everyone had a comfortable living situation. Our villa is a 4,000 square feet 1 bedroom, 1 bath including sauna, living room, a grand outdoor space, with an outdoor bathtub, pool and slide to get in the ocean. We have not even made it a whole 24 hours here yet and a fight has already broken out. During dinner, my cousin mentioned wanting to come over and use our slide. My grandparents asked what we were talking about and asked to see pictures of our room. Well, they saw my villa and demanded that we trade rooms with them as no elders should be made to serve and live as peasants while their grandchildren get a nicer room. This is Bora Bora we're talking about. No one is living as a peasant here. There was only one villa available in our section. Had I given it to my grandparents I think it would have been offensive to my husband's grandparents. If there were 3, we would have given it to both grandparents and one for ourselves. But unfortunately, there wasn't. I mentioned this and they still demanded the villa. I obviously objected, and said I felt as though my husband and I should have that room as this is a vacation with family to celebrate our marriage, plus we paid for this entire trip. Wouldn't one just sit back and be grateful they're on a free vacation instead of complaining? My grandparents freaked out, saying I'm holding money above their head and that I'm being disrespectful and not following their orders. They stormed off after threatening to take the first flight out tomorrow morning and leaving. Update: would I be the a-hole if I didn't give up my honeymoon villa to my grandparents? Even though I really wanted to be petty and tell them to get lost, I decided it'd be better to kill them with kindness so they have little to work with if they decide to spin it around that I was disrespectful. During breakfast my grandparents refused to show up if I was there. Everyone tried calling them. Nope, we're not coming cause disrespectful granddaughter is there. After a lot of persuading and even having to send our baby cousin to their room to soften them up, they finally decided to come. I made the first conversation by asking if they looked at any flights to leave yet. They could forward the pay stub to my cell. They said they hadn't looked yet and that it would be my job if I was kicking them out. I made sure they knew I was not kicking them out, but understood if they wanted to leave and offered to send some staff to their room to pack up their belongings so they could have a little more time to explore, or get their complimentary in-room massage that comes with all the bungalows. They kind of stopped eating and looked at each other in shock. Every time they threatened not to go anywhere, my family has always babied them and begged them not to leave and offer money or extravagant gifts for them to stay. Well, I'm not doing that. I'll pay for their flight back home, but I've already done enough accommodating on my honeymoon vacation. So there you have it. My grandparents weren't even planning to go home, they tried scaring me into begging them to stay. I called their bluff. After breakfast, I found a flight leaving around 5 p.m. and walked to the main desk to ask them to cancel reservations for that room for the rest of the trip and to send staff to help pack. They also didn't get their complimentary massage because the resort only offers that on 4-night stays or longer. Staff came to help pack, and they left half an hour ago. I'm currently in my villa stressing. Before dinner, and some uncles came in and confided in me that they were sick and tired of the entitlement my grandparents have had since day one, and they were glad someone born into the family decided to speak up. My cousins came over and honestly couldn't care less. My grandparents are gone. In their words, they kill the vibe. What secret was revealed when cleaning out the home of a deceased family member? 1. Grandma had multiple cats and freezers. 2. My step-grandma had been married 5 more times than she told my grandpa she had been. He was her 9th husband, not her 4th. 3. I found a hidden .38 revolver on my late stepfather's bookshelf. Every bullet in the gun had the name Steve written in Sharpie. No one had ever heard of him. 4. That my father committed suicide and did not die of a heart attack. He said that he was a cop under investigation for theft and took the quick way out. 5. Grandpa did drawings of the faces of the people he unalived in World War II. Nobody knows why, but my grandma said he had a lot of guilt over the things he saw. My guess is, he didn't want to forget them or didn't feel like he should be allowed to forget them. 6. Drawing my grandpa did of my grandma wearing nothing but a feather boa. 7. My husband died a few years ago. He had terminal cancer and knew he was dying. I found several notes and letters written to me in advance. He had scattered them in various places around our home. Some were marked open when you can't stop crying, open when the holidays are too rough, and open when you have to put one of the cats to sleep. 8. While going through my dad's safe, I found some adoption papers. While reading through them, I got excited at the prospect I might have a brother out there somewhere. I couldn't understand why my parents never told me that they'd adopted a child. After rereading them, I realized that the papers were about me. 9. We were cleaning out a client's hoarder home. This was a very affluent family and a lovely from the outside home. We found a ton of homemade adult films from the 1950s and 1960s. Our client, now in her 90s, was the star of most photos. We're talking really graphic stuff with multiple men and women. She was gorgeous and very photogenic. Needless to say, we did not put those pictures in the pile of keepers to give to her children and grandchildren. 10. Our uncle died. He is 62 years old and single. When our mom and her sister went to clean out his apartment, they found mass quantities of hardcore pornography. His bedroom was decorated like a young girl's, and the mattress had a hole bored into it about waist high. Guys, have you ever made a huge mistake while thinking with your PP? My friend and I have always been attracted to each other and decided to become friends with benefits. She had a preference for DCKS that had the snip, however my PP had a hood. She said she had unpleasant experiences with previous partners who did not have the snip and was disgusted when one of her previous partners had PP cheese. Even though I guaranteed her that I thoroughly washed my PP as frequently as possible, she was still uncomfortable with the thought of sleeping with another unsnipped partner because she was worried that her past experience might lead to her getting the ick when she saw my uncut PP, regardless if it was clean or not. My friend asked if I ever considered the snip. I said I never considered it because I was happy with it the way it was. My friend apologized for being turned off by an uncut PP and suggested that we brainstorm ways to work around it somehow. After the first week of only going down on her, we agreed we needed an alternative. So a few weeks ago, I decided to get the snip. I wanted to go all the way with my friend and I was willing to allow a complete stranger to literally chop off parts of my PP to accomplish that. My friend was over the moon when she heard I was getting the snip. After the procedure, I was advised to avoid all intimate activity that involved my now snipped PP for a period of 4 weeks. My friend and I obviously had to pause our plan to sleep together during that time. As of today, it's been 2 weeks and 2 days since my circumcision, and the plan my friend and I had to hook up is no longer on pause. It's dead, done, not happening. Less than a week after my snip, my friend met the perfect guy apparently. He's an optometrist and I think he might have helped her see that sleeping with him was a much better option than sleeping with me. My friend has downplayed the connection between the two of them, but going into the 3rd week of my recovery, it's become clear to me that my friend has hearts in her eyes for the eye doctor.
Am I stupid or is this normal? I, 21 female, have been in my current relationship for almost 3 years now. My boyfriend, 23 male, is or acts very tough in all aspects, the way he talks, intimacy, and the way he reacts. Last night we took a late night walk and decided to sit down for a bit. We were having a normal conversation and I made a small inside joke, and instead of laughing he just smiled and laid his hands on me very hard. I think about how I'm sounding right now and it sounds so ridiculous. I can't believe I'm writing this. When he laughs he is the type of person to shove you or stand up and push you while laughing. However, he was not laughing, he just slapped very hard without saying a word. Even the men who were on the corner store turned around to see what that loud slapping sound was. It was embarrassing. Is this normal? I don't have friends or close family to talk to, so I don't know what to think about it. I told him I didn't like that, but he claims he didn't do anything and I'm just exaggerating. Has anyone been in a similar situation?
What is the most selfish/scummiest thing you've ever done? This kid was crying over a Lego set he wasn't allowed to buy, so I bought it in front of him, for myself. When I was 4 or 5, I got one of those small $2 packs of some Star Wars character that's usually on the side of the checkout lanes with all the candy and gum. I didn't know what it was then, but there were blasters and I wanted it. I wasn't a spoiled child, I never asked for much. So my parents didn't really care, it was only $2. I didn't know what I was getting into. By the time I was 6, I had watched all the Star Wars films and cared too much about the Clone Wars show. 10 years later, I'm still a Star Wars nerd and I'm currently surrounded by 4 giant posters and a bunch of memorabilia. Let's go back again. When I was 8, I bought my second Lego set. I actually knew what Star Wars was this time, so I wasn't going to get a set of some random unnamed Jedi that died during Order 66 fighting against one clone trooper. I just got a regular $10 one. Not the mini packets, but not the giant cardboard sets either. I wasn't a very needy child, it was the second Lego set I ever bought, the first one from 2 years earlier still in perfect condition to this day. But there was this kid. This damn kid. I knew what I wanted to get, but I noticed there was only one on the shelf. Now I'm a nice person, I don't stand too close to strangers, I give him his space. So I decided, alright, I'll just walk in and get it after the kid moves away. That kid literally didn't move away. His hands all over my box and the one I wanted. He started crying all over the place. Smearing his hands all wet with tears on the box. He held it in his hand and ran all over the store with it. His face was bright red, damn, he wanted that thing. After his guardian said no for the millionth time, he put it back on the shelf. It was time. Run in quickly, grab it, pay for it, and walk out. So I ran in, grabbed it, paid for it, and walked out. But this isn't one of those small mall locations. This store was huge. The checkout counter was at the very back, so I had to walk for like a minute to get to the front. Since I was at the store with my family friend, I just sat there while he picked out some Lego set meant for kids, like the bigger blocks kind of thing. Star Wars Episode 6, Return of the Kid. The kid comes back to the same location, dragging his mom. It's probably the first time the mom even walked there with him, she just kept saying no before. The kid was so confused. The box, which was there minutes ago, was suddenly gone. His mom thought that there was nothing there in the first place, so she picked him up and carried him out the store. The kid, still bawling his eyes out. As the mom had him over her shoulder, the kid glanced at me as he was being carried out. He saw the set he wanted in my hand. Keep in mind that this set is small, so I told the cashier no when he asked me if I wanted a bag. I mean, I'll just put it in the bag of another store my parents are shopping in, no need for more plastic bags. The kid sees it. He starts screaming and pointing and trying to get his mom's attention. The kid barely makes out the words telling his mom that I took what he wanted. Now, she understands that I took what her son wanted. She comes up to me, with her kid staring down at me as I'm sitting on the ledge by the front of the store. Thank you.
I found out my husband has a hidden spank bank, and it's filled with pictures of my sister. So I could write a book about everything that led up to this discovery, but I am going to try and keep it simple. A little backstory. Me, 29 female, and my husband, 29 male, are high school sweethearts. I would say he is the male version of me. Before this we have never had a fight, just a disagreement once in a blue moon. We have been together 12 years and have 2 beautiful boys, ages 1 and 2, we are as close to the white picket fence life as it gets. Me and my sister, 25 female, are as opposite as they come. I am a tall brunette that's a little heavyset due to my back-to-back pregnancies. My sister is a short petite blonde. I am a hard worker who went to college and have a career. My sister surprisingly finished high school and barely holds a part-time job. I seem to take care of everyone and everything but myself, and I've never minded it. My sister, in her own words, has said all she cares about is looking hot. My husband is an amazing partner. He works his butt off to provide for this family while also putting in just as much effort in childcare and household upkeep as I do. I respected and trusted him completely and without question. In what can only be described as women's intuition, I went looking through some of his Discord messages with a group of buddies. He hadn't been himself lately and something just told me to do it. I don't know what I thought I would find, but I certainly didn't expect this. A message thread of him bragging about how hot my sister is. Photos of her he had sent, and messages saying she was the best 10 out of 10 lovemaking he has ever had. My world shattered. The biggest questions I had was when and how? They have always been very appropriate with each other, and never given any reason to expect this. When he got home that night, that's exactly what I asked him. The look of complete shame on his face is all I remember. He began a long confession of how, although he does find my sister attractive, he has never made love with her. It was essentially made-up locker room talk with the boys to make it look like he had scored a total babe. After me asking questions and him answering honestly, he confessed that he used to keep a secret folder with pictures of my sister, but that he deleted it long ago and didn't have it anymore. He even showed me how he would hide the pictures because I have always had immediate access to his phone. Well, curious me remembered his old phone from several years ago sitting in a dresser drawer. Once I was alone that night, I gave it a charge. I agree now, I should not have looked. Dozens of photos of my sister from Facebook, Instagram, and candid pictures taken filled his hidden spank bank. This had gone on for years and I had no clue. Absolute heartbreak consumed me, and several nights later I told my husband I wanted a divorce. I would not compete with my sister for my husband's affection. And how can I ever be in a room with my sister again and not feel inadequate? This wasn't some woman he had a fling with and we'd never see again. This is someone we see at every family barbecue, birthday, holiday, etc. But he would hear none of it. He said he knew his actions were wrong but never imagined how devastated I would be to find out, and he would now do anything he could to help me heal, and in his defense he has tried. It has been a year since the discovery and he has spent that time constantly reassuring me, helping me through triggers and being patient with my mood swings. He pretty much avoids my sister, but we have to be together. He tries his best to make sure I'm okay. I have never spoken about this with anyone. I see it as our personal problems and it's no one's business. Recently, though, I had a constant nagging feeling that my sister knew something about my husband's feelings. Several things she said involving my husband, that before I would have thought innocent, now seem suspicious. I brought this up to him asking if there is anything she knew of that I didn't. Once again I saw the look of shame. He confessed in previous years he would grab my sister's butt when the opportunity presented itself. It had happened dozens of times spaced out over years and was a flirty little thing between them. Obviously I once again shattered into a million pieces. This was now a physical relationship they shared behind my back. He swears it never went further than that. He explained that he suspected my sister of intentionally doing things trying to get his attention. Mostly around the time she was having boyfriend troubles. Basically she was being a big tease any time I wasn't around or paying attention. That's what led to him becoming Mr. Handsy and creating his spank bank. Hindsight, I can recall several instances I should have picked up on but brushed off as nothing. So yes, I believe she did in fact participate in what he claims. I asked why he never said anything about this before and he stated that he had stopped it years ago, and didn't want to stir up any drama with me and my sister over something that happened several years ago. I'm trying so hard to be okay, but this is a huge setback to my healing. I feel broken all over again. I am angry at both of them. I feel like a fool. Part of me says my husband is a sneaky, lying jerk and I should leave him. Break his heart like he has done mine. The other part says he is a great husband and father. He is a human who made a mistake and is actively trying to correct his wrongs, so I should work on forgiveness and healing. If anyone has advice on the situation or what I should do moving forward, I'd love to hear it.
I stalked my husband for 2.5 years before we truly met. I married my husband about 1.5 years ago. The first time I saw my husband I was a freshman in high school, he was a freshman in college. He was walking his dog at the park, when he stopped to talk to my brother because they happened to go to high school together. That was the moment I became hooked. That same day I found his Instagram, his family's social media, and also where he lived since my brother offered to walk him home while I tagged along. When I got home that day I knew I wanted him, but of course I was only 14 while he was 18, so I came up with a plan. I found out his younger brother was only 1 year younger than me and would be attending my current high school. I figured that I had to befriend his younger brother by any means possible next year when he moves up as a freshman while I become a sophomore, and I did. It took around halfway of my junior year where we became best friends and he invited me over regularly to his house to hang out. This is where I was able to befriend my current husband's mom, and God did she love to talk about him. From her, I found out what college he goes to, his past girlfriends, what his elementary and middle school was, his favorite/least favorite foods, his pet peeves, what he likes, etc. etc. Eventually when my visits started getting more and more frequent, I formally met current husband again. Current husband, I'll call him E, would come over every other week and stay for either Friday to Sunday, or Saturday to Sunday. On those days specifically I would wear my cutest outfits to impress him, and also joke around with him a lot. Eventually I befriended him as well. A little background on E, he is the school record holder for a certain sport at my school, which I just so happened to do. And around halfway through my senior year he came back during the season to help coach the current high school athletes, which included me, in order to get some more volunteer work hours in, and I got to spend a lot more time with him. I loved every second of it. We were friends before, but then we became much closer since I got to spend lots of extra time with him after school, where sometimes he would even drive me home since we lived relatively close. Fast forward to when I had to move away to NYC for college, he moved with me since he coincidentally got a job near my college. Being each other's only friends in a new state, we became incredibly close. We started dating when I was almost a sophomore year of college, he proposed to me after I graduated, and we just got married almost a year ago. He knows absolutely nothing about how I truly know him, and believes it is fate that brought us together through his younger brother. Lately I've been debating on whether or not I should tell him, or at least his younger brother the truth, since the only reason I befriended him was to get closer to E. I feel guilty every time he tells others our love story, because the truth is, I've known him for 10 years, while he's only known me for about 7. Update, I stalked my husband for 2 years before I formally met him. I told him this 4th of July. After the fireworks mostly ended and we were heading back, I asked him in the car, wouldn't it have been weird if we met each other before the first time we actually met? But we just didn't think of each other as significant at the time? He smiled and turned to me saying, PFFT, that's impossible. There's no universe where we would have met and I would not think of you as significant. That statement struck me in the heart, because I knew I would soon prove that sentence very wrong, but I continued on with my plan anyway. What if I told you we have met each other before? Before that time I was introduced as E's little brother's friend? He looked at me like I was crazy, so that's when I pulled over on the side of the road and pulled out my phone to show him the post I put up here. Before, that explained everything. He took about 8 minutes to read the whole thing, and when he finished he put the phone down and stared straight ahead, almost like he was dumbfounded, scared, and confused all at the same time. I started throwing out every excuse and apology I could muster at the moment for about 15 minutes straight when he decided to tell me to stop, and I did. Then he just sat there and sobbed uncontrollably for about 10 minutes before he finally asked me how much of our relationship, and how much of my identity, was fabricated according to his liking. I told him the honest truth, none of my personality or identity was fabricated for him, except for the fact of how we met. The only thing I ever changed about myself to make him like me more was lying about liking Chinese food. I hate Chinese food. But other than that everything else was real. Although my friendship with his younger brother was built upon ill intentions, my friendship between his brother and I are now one of the most genuine friendships I have now. He just cried and told me that he does not want a divorce at all, but he does want us to have some time apart so that he could absorb the truth that I gave him. He also said that he expects me to tell his brother and mom this Friday because they deserve to know the truth just as much as he did. I told him okay, and we drove the rest of the ride home in silence. When we got home he hugged me and cried for about 5 minutes before he got out the car, packed his stuff, and said that he will be staying at a nearby hotel for now. He said that he knows that he still loves me, but does not yet know how to react to the fact that the beginning of our relationship was very, very orchestrated. Am I the a-hole for refusing to give my job up to save my marriage? I work as a marine engineer on rigs and ships for a large part of the year. This leads to me spending a lot of time from home. The time I'm away from my family isn't very easy on me either, but I have always lived for my job. I had the luck of being able to completely apply myself to my passion because of supporting parents and an understanding partner, up until recently. My career choices have always been consensual between husband and wife. I met my wife during college and now she is a stay-at-home mom to my 2 kids. Whenever I get an internet connection I try to call or FaceTime as much as possible. Same thing goes for my wife. Now that the kids have gotten a bit older, they seem to be having a harder time with me leaving home for such a long time. In the last few months I've been able to keep them happy because of devoting my vacation time entirely to the family. We go on trips all the time, I take the kids to school and camping and take my wife out on dates. All was good and well. That is until last year, when I got a lucrative contract which entails me working on a ship for 3-month stretches, only being able to briefly return home by plane when shoreside at certain ports. I guess even back then she was very hesitant in her approval of the situation. I was just so excited at this prospect, that I didn't take a long, hard look at her interests. She didn't protest too much and I ended up persuading her with financial arguments. Fast forward to last week. I returned home after an assignment, eager to jump into vacation with my family. Instead of a heartwarming welcome, I got sat down by my wife in the kitchen. She took my kids to her parents' house, so they weren't around. She starts telling me that she has had a long time to think about this, literally, seeing as I'm away from home so often and for so long, in her eyes at least, tells me I never listen to her concerns and she proceeds to issue me an ultimatum. Either I seriously think about changing careers or she moves back to her parents' house, with my kids, and she files for divorce and custody. My eyes almost popped out of my head. From our last few calls such a statement actually didn't come entirely unexpected, but this kind of threat is totally unlike her. I suspected she would propose therapy or something. However, the way in which she juxtaposed these decisions almost seemed as if I had to choose between my job and my family right then and there. This really rubbed me the wrong way. I tried to keep calm and I told her that I was very sorry for the hardships she had to go through these last months, when I was away from home, that we would try and figure it out together. But I couldn't give her an immediate answer because there were many factors I had to take into account: flexible job offers within my field, contractual employment that leaves me with current commitments, our location, we don't live anywhere near a port, financially. I tried to explain this as rationally as possible, referring to the fact that I wouldn't be able to radically change much on a short-term basis. Even if I could, I would still have to take it up with my employer and give notice, etc. She then called me out on always putting her second, being egotistical, she having to give up her job for me, even on this occasion when she makes it clear that there is a fair chance of losing her. Seeing as I was tired from my trip home, getting a bit pissed at her constant inconsiderate behavior and comments and taking into account that I was really expecting a different kind of welcome, I got up, slammed the door, juvenile, I know, to the bedroom and got into bed. I laid there for about an hour, not getting any sleep, thinking everything over and regretting my behavior, got up and looked around for her. Her car was gone from the driveway, no notes, nothing. I checked my phone, which also did not show any messages. I texted her, asking where she was and did not receive an answer until the morning after. I didn't sleep at all that night. She also ended up staying with her parents for the night. I was invited over for dinner at their house that very same day, where I finally got to see my kids, who were luckily unaware of the whole ordeal. During dinner things were pretty normal, until she started sneaking in snide comments about my absence, not being around during a few key moments in my eldest daughter's school life, my father-in-law having to be there in my stead during some school event. Shit got pretty heated. I barely recognize this woman at times now. It's like she did a 180-degree turn during my last assignment. My in-laws ended up excusing themselves and taking my kids with them to the back because of the tension. She still wouldn't budge when I just cut to the chase and opened the box of Pandora. I proposed getting more help around the house if she needed that, a nanny or something, but she would have none of it. The only thing that could appease her is hearing out of my mouth that I would quit my current position or that I would get into therapy with her. So I ended up agreeing with the latter, because I cannot simply promise the former. Things progressed strange but okay from there on out. I returned home with them and spent the last few days doing activities with my kids. The day before yesterday, she reprimands me about looking into any other job applications yet. I told her I read up on some other engineering positions that lend themselves well to my background, such as maintenance or stationary engineering in the city, but pointed out that would take time because of license requirements as well as the things I already stated above. Once again, I told her that I'm not sure yet about the direction this is taking and that I hope therapy bring us some insights. I booked an appointment for next week, but I'm not expecting much from it to be fair. In conclusion, I'm left with a woman who clearly harbors a lot of resentment towards me. I feel emasculated because of this behavior. Especially the threat of divorce on that first date just seems to blow things so much out of proportion.
What loophole did you exploit for years before someone found out? There is an app for a local burger chain where it allows you to roll the dice to get a code for a free double patty burger upgrade. It was designed so you could only try it once per day, and it even shows the date of the roll on the code so the cashier could verify it. However, I found out that you can just change the date on your phone and try again immediately. If you got nothing, change it again and just keep going until you get the code. Then, when you got the code, you change the date back to current date and the app updates the code so it looks like you rolled it today. I got free burger upgrades for years until they finally got rid of the feature altogether. I don't know if anyone ever figured out this exploit. They removed it for other reasons. Years ago I was a season ticket holder for an awful NBA team. My tickets came electronically via PDF. I had okay seats in the upper part of the lower bowl, but nothing great. Anyway, on nights where I knew it would be empty, which was most nights unless a superstar like Kobe or LeBron was in town, I would use the full version of Adobe Acrobat to edit the PDFs to indicate a much better seat location than mine. The barcode still scanned just fine because I didn't mess with it, but when the usher took my printout all he saw was that I was sitting on the floor. Got away with it for years until the team actually got good for a while and the place was packed.
Has anyone else struggled with friends making birthdays difficult? I recently turned 18, which is a significant milestone in the Philippines, similar to a sweet 16 or quinceañera. It's a highly anticipated birthday celebration, but I didn't feel like doing much to celebrate. My parents kept asking me what I wanted to do, and although I initially wanted a simple meal and maybe go bowling, I also wanted to make my parents happy, so I decided to do something more special. My hesitation stemmed from a few years ago when I was around 14 or 15. I had planned a small pool party and invited about 10 friends. My brother reserved the clubhouse in our neighborhood, and my mom prepared food for us. However, on the day of the party, no one showed up. Some friends messaged me with last-minute excuses, while others simply ignored me. I didn't understand why, and it was quite devastating at the time. About a week later, I borrowed a friend's phone to send something to myself. When I opened their messaging app, I stumbled upon a chat that caught my attention. It was my friend and another person I had invited, discussing how they decided not to come to my party because they didn't actually like me. I tried to pretend I hadn't seen it and proceeded with my original intention, but it deeply affected me. Since then, I stopped inviting friends to my birthdays and only celebrated with my family. On my 18th birthday, however, because my parents kept asking about it, I decided to invite friends again. I never told my parents about the heartbreak I experienced in the past. I was so nervous that my friends would also bail on me that I kept asking them repeatedly if they were planning to come. I secretly hoped that guilt would make them attend. Thankfully, they did come, and we had a great time. So, in the end, it was a positive experience, but the memories of that one painful birthday still make me anxious about future celebrations, even after all these years. TLDR, on my 14th or 15th birthday, no one showed up, and later I accidentally read messages from friends saying they wouldn't come because they didn't like me. Since then, I stopped inviting friends to my birthdays. But on my 18th birthday, I invited friends again, although I was anxious they would flake out, and thankfully, they came. However, the past experiences still make me nervous about birthdays.
My ex-husband left me for our friend, and everyone supports it. My ex-husband, 55 male, and I, 53 female, were married for 22 years and have one son, 18. He left me 2 years ago for my friend, who he had been having an affair with for 5 years. To be fair, they went to high school together, so they knew each other longer. We still live in the same town they grew up in, and both of their extended families still live here. They have a huge support system. I grew up about 2 hours away and met my husband in college. I became friends with Tina, 55, through my ex, Kent. We have been in the same social circles for over 2 decades. My ex is extremely social, popular, and the life of every party. Everyone knows him and everyone loves him. Tina has always been sweet, kind, and loving. She has always been very loved by everyone. My marriage has always been tough. My ex physically abused myself and my son. He has always been extremely verbally and emotionally abusive as well. I know I should have left him the first time he put his hands on my son, but he convinced me that no one would believe me because everyone loves him. Everyone thinks he's such a great guy. He told me I would never see my son again, and I believed him. I did everything in my power to shield my son and take all the hits. Most of the time I was successful, but not always. About 4 years ago, Tina's husband was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. He died about 9 months later. Tina's 3 kids were devastated. The whole community was devastated, because everyone just loves Tina because she is just the nicest person and didn't deserve to lose her soulmate. I, on the other hand, have been struggling. I never confided in anyone about the abuse going on. I was embarrassed and ashamed. I wasn't protecting my only child. I was a stay-at-home mom and my ex owned his own successful construction company. On the outside we were perfect. I went back to school to become a teacher so I could support myself when I eventually could leave. My son started getting in trouble at school. Smoking Zaza, drinking. In general, angry all the time. I felt the same but thought I had time to get us out and away from him. I was wrong. 3 years ago, Tina was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. Everyone was in shock. No one could believe so soon after her husband that she too would be dealing with cancer. The community rallied around her and the kids, Facebook posts nonstop about being their strength in the weeks following the news. That's when Kent came home, packed his bags and with the cruelest tone yet, told me that Tina and him had been together for the last 5 years, they were in love and he was going to spend every last second he could with her, because life was too short. He never loved me and was only with me because she married someone else. I was simultaneously relieved and devastated. Tina was my friend. She was sleeping with my husband while hers was dying. What the heck? It became public knowledge pretty quickly that they were a couple now, and come to find out, several of our friends had known all along. There were lots of guys skiing trips and guys' nights out that included Tina. The other wives, the ones that I thought were also my friends, turns out they consider Tina's friendship more important, because she is the beloved golden child of the community along with my ex. They could do no wrong and everyone just loves them, and it turns out, I'm the villain of this story. Apparently, I'm the bad guy because I stood in the way of their true love. Not a single person has called them out for what they did to me or Tina's husband. They have faced zero consequences. Actually, the complete opposite. Our entire small community is celebrating them, because they are just the best. Kent moved directly into Tina's house, the one she shared with her husband, along with my son. Turns out Kent was cool with them smoking Zaza together because he's the cool dad. He let him skip school, get high and stay out as late as he wanted. I was such a drag because I didn't want my son to be on stuff and to go to school and get an education. My son stopped coming home, stopped taking my calls, responding to texts, and told me that I deserved what happened to me, then he blocked me everywhere. From what I understand, since graduating, he now works part-time at a chicken wing place. My so-called friends completely ghosted me too. Kent calls and texts on a regular basis to tell me what a piece of crap I am. I don't know why I haven't blocked him. I guess just in case something happens to my son. I'm starting to believe that I am the problem. I think it must be me. Something must be wrong with me for everyone in my life to do this to me. I should move. I don't have anything left here. I'm embarrassed to even go to the grocery store. I've seen people that used to be my friends out and they just look at me funny and never say a word. I don't want any advice. I just don't have anyone left and really just wanted to scream into the internet void because no one in real life cares. My dad died when I was 24, my mom lives in Denver, my brother lives in DC. I see them for holidays, and they check in on me to make sure I'm still alive. I thought once Kent and I were divorced my life would start over and would be amazing. It was supposed to be my second chance at life. It's just the opposite. It's so much worse. How can that be? Why don't I deserve happiness? Before you come for me, yes, I'm in therapy, yes, I'm exercising every single day and am in the best shape of my life, yes, I'm finding new hobbies. But I just can't get over the complete betrayal of my good friend and all the other people I thought were friends. Not a single person in the crappy community has been kind to me since this all came out. Not one. My whole adult life has been a lie and I'm struggling. That's it. End of rant. What is the darkest thing you have ever done and don't regret? My mom was being evil and had gotten a case of her favorite candy from our home region that is only sold there, and we lived really far away from there. Oh, and this was before you could order it online. She literally got it from a relative who is a trucker who traveled there. He could only bring stuff once a year like that. I got my fave soda. Now because my mom was being evil, she's got narcissistic personality disorder, she was whipping me and my big brother a lot, just because. So we found where she hid her candy in the kitchen because I was putting away the dishes and her candy was in the back of the cupboard and keeping stuff from fitting where it used to fit normally, and we hid it in the dead space in the headboard of my bed. When she started acting evil again the next day, we told her we had her candy and that every time she screamed at us or hit us when we didn't do anything wrong, we would eat one. She tore the whole house apart looking for them. She didn't find them. She freaked out really bad. Told us to clean up and stormed out, presumably to check the dumpster at the end of the street. She was severely pissed and tried to take my soda hostage to force a prisoner exchange, but she couldn't find my soda. It had been removed from its carton and the cans were dropped into the hole in a large gourd which was used as decoration for our themed living room. So Mom was being evil again, hitting us for no reason, so we ate one of her candy bars that night, left the wrapper on the kitchen table. We kind of felt it was as close as we could get to leaving a horse head in her bed. She ripped the house apart again. Didn't find shit. She said that was all we had and must have thrown the rest away. This time we told her to clean her own mess. She whipped us, so we ate a candy bar each that night. Left the wrappers on the table again with a note saying she'd get them back when she was nice to us for a change, but that if she didn't mend her ways we would eat all 60 candy bars. Well, she did calm down a bit, and on her birthday, we gave her one for good behavior. Then she started being evil again. Yes, we got beat, but we laughed at her while she was hitting us and counted off the cost in candy bars. That number of wrappers were on the table the next morning. We ended up eating all but 4 of the candy bars. She went a month without hitting or screaming and we gave her the last 4 back as a...
The Journal of Jimmy C. The Demon. My name in the journal is Reese. Notes on what happened at Tybee Island, Georgia, On the first Tuesday in December 2005, drove there during the day, and the sunshine was getting me down. Kept thinking about how earlier I had gone to Reese's house after waking up there, and he woke up early, took a shower, came back and woke me up, acted very sweet. Then I went home, took a shower, came back to go with him to Tybee, and he'd gotten drunk already and was teasing me, being sort of an ass. I even threatened to go home once, but I stayed, feeling that I really should go to Tybee with him. But I was excited to show Tybee to Will during the day since I knew it well and he'd never seen it. He talked about how it all reminded him of his childhood as we drove through the salt marshes and over bridges, the sun, the palm trees. I'd grown up in fog, got to Tybee and he wanted to get a couple of beers even though we had rum in the trunk, well really the back of the van. The first bar we went to carded Rees, and so we left, remarking that everyone in the place had given us strange looks as soon as we walked in. Went over to Fanny's a couple of doors down, all in the area of the beach by the pier. I decided I didn't want a beer after all and told the woman I'd just like a glass of water. Rees had a beer, only cost $1. Noticed the white Volkswagen Beetle parked outside when I came in, but did not see Jimmy enter. Rees pointed out a man sitting one stool down from me drumming his fingers strangely on the stainless steel bar, more like dancing with his nails, stretching his long fingers. Thought immediately that he was gay. Rees and I watched and talked in whispers about it for a few minutes before he, the stranger, spoke. He first talked about how I had noticed him dancing with his nails, then looked at his nails, surprised, and said they look like shit. I laughed, getting a weird feeling about the guy. He then spoke about how it's important to notice details and he likes it when people pay attention, that he pays attention to everything, that he knows that I do too. His eyes are blue and gray, he has blonde hair and a narrow pointed nose above pale lips that cover crooked teeth, not very white, almost like fangs. His teeth are all I can look at until I look him in the eye, something I normally won't do until I know a person at least a little, and he seems to evade me. He asks if I love Rees. Without hesitation, I nod and say yes. He asks Rees, do you love her? And he looks uncomfortable, laughs a little bit, says, yeah, I guess so. Then the guy says that I am beautiful, and that if Rees doesn't love me, unconditionally, as I do him, someone else will. He touches my hair and says that I am a creature of God. He then tells us that he walked 3 miles up and down the beach and it sucked. Said some things about God's green earth, told a story about a scorpion that asked a frog for a ride across a river, who then stung the frog, told the frog it was in his nature, and then they both enjoyed their last minutes of life because they both would then die. He told Rees he knew him and kept trying to get to him through me. He'd say I'm not hitting on you girl, but continually told me I was beautiful. He tried to piss Rees off, kept saying that he knew him, said he is in his room at night, he's what crawls on Rees' back, told Rees his glasses were cheap, that my glasses were perfect because I see through them rather than hide behind them. Then he said that I was perfection, that I was one step away from becoming myself. Earlier he talked about fashion, thought my glasses might be Armani, said Prada was his favorite person, when I noticed that his orange leather jacket had a red rectangle of fabric on the left breast that said Prada. He said to Rees that he knew who he was, to which Rees replied that he knew who he was. The stranger left to go to his car to get money for more drinks. He'd offered to buy us all a shot of tequila and already bought Rees a beer. As he walked out he pointed to the license plate. His car was the white Beetle outside. The license plate read Fierce. While he was gone, Rees asked me if I knew who the man was. I nodded, saying I had an idea. Yeah, but you think you're crazy every time you think it, don't you? I was thinking the man was the devil or something close. Then I wrote that I missed some things. Here they are. When asked where he was from, he didn't ASN our. We thought he could have been from Tybee, but he said he didn't live there. Asked him where he lived and he just started talking about his other car, a Mercedes-Benz with a plate that said Utopia. Asked if he lived in his car, he said no, Utopia's doors are closed to me. Rees asked him where he learned all he was talking about. He'd said he could speak 5 languages, English being the most important because it is trained and often spoke a few sentences in a language I could not recognize. And he said he lived in San Francisco, where he jumped off a bridge and died. This is the point where I told her to leave. That's when he said he would have drowned me in the ocean, started referring to himself as we and finally told me that the next time I would see him it would be in that black Mercedes. When I read what she had written, literally that day, I knew that I wasn't imagining the details wrong. That this actually happened. This is probably the single most frustrating and scary thing that has ever happened to me. I want to imagine it's just a normal crazy guy, but unless you saw it and felt it and heard him talk about all the little details of what you were supposed to do that day when only you knew it, you just can't understand the impact of it. It's been 10 years, and my only solace really is that my ex-girlfriend was there to corroborate. That communication, where I reached out to her, actually caused us to be on good terms again after a decade. It seems to have been something that bothered her just as much as it bothered me. And still, to this day, even though I'm living 10,000 miles away in Southeast Asia, I can't stop looking for that car. I can't stop thinking about Jimmy C's twisted face. I wonder if he still crawls on my back, and if the fear I feel at night, often to where I must drink myself to sleep or find a one-night stand just so I don't feel alone, is him, or them, watching me. How do I tell my girlfriend I might have gotten my ex pregnant? I apologize for the mistakes I made in my previous post. Here is a revised version that is easier to understand. I need to share my story, and I'll keep it brief. I'm a 26-year-old man, and my ex-girlfriend is 23. Currently, I have a girlfriend who is also 23. I was in a relationship with my ex for 5 years, but as time went on, we grew apart. She developed a constant negative attitude and became lazy. Despite my many attempts to address these issues, our relationship couldn't be salvaged. We still live together because we have a 2-year-old child together. While we get along well as friends, we are incompatible as a couple. About 9 months ago, I made the difficult decision that we should no longer be together. We both agreed on this. Approximately 4 months ago, I started talking to an old coworker of my ex whom I used to give rides to occasionally. Initially, my ex wasn't thrilled about it, but she eventually accepted it as normal friendship and we moved on. My current girlfriend has been great with my child, and she and my ex get along fine. Life seemed to be going smoothly for me. However, one night, about a month ago, I made a terrible mistake while intoxicated and slept with my ex. I know I was wrong, and I'm fully aware that I need to tell my current girlfriend. That's why I am seeking advice here. I understand that my current girlfriend deserves to know the truth, and I acknowledge my foolishness in cheating. I know she has every right to end our relationship and have no further contact with me. However, I still have hopes of working things out with my current girlfriend if it's at all possible. Unfortunately, all of this has become much more complicated because my ex told me yesterday that she missed her period and has been experiencing cramping. She plans to take a pregnancy test tomorrow. I want to wait until I know for sure whether she is pregnant before I inform my girlfriend. If my ex isn't pregnant, it would save unnecessary anguish and would increase the likelihood of salvaging my relationship with my current girlfriend. I'm seeking advice rather than criticism for my actions. I realize the mistakes I've made, and I'm already filled with regret. I intend to provide an update once I find out if my ex is pregnant and after I have spoken with my current girlfriend. Thank you for taking the time to read this, and any advice is greatly appreciated. I slept with a 16-year-old girl at a family reunion. I came back from college and went to a party with my parents. This party was a family reunion with around 50+ family members. I go to a prestigious school and my parents wanted me to give some advice to our 16-year-old cousin. She was telling me about her AP classes, but the entire time she was just flirting with me. All I really wanted to do was watch football, so I just ignored it all, but I actually ended up going back to my place with her. I've been on a 7-month dry spell, and she wanted to see my room. We got a little bit frisky and well, you know the rest of the story. She whispers in my ear that she was a virgin and has been waiting for someone like me to take it. She gets a little too excited and asks if I could be her prom date. On top of this, she also asks me what photo of us would look best for her Facebook, and I said no, you are my cousin. That's when it hits me that I just had intimacy with my cousin. If this gets out to the family, they will never accept me ever again. I don't know how fast she's taking our little fling, and my parents would not be cool with this. She tells me her parents would be fine with it because, well, I go to a good school. For reference, I am 21, I wouldn't mind starting a relationship with her even if the age difference is there, because seriously she's a 10 out of 10. This girl thinks of me as a god and I can't just reject her now that we've gotten this far. Is it wrong of me to date my 16-year-old cousin? My wife of nearly 7 years is replacing me. Well, my wife of nearly 7 years told me 2 days ago she was seeing a guy and had been for about 8 months. I had my suspicions, especially recently, but I held her to a high moral standard and never thought she could be capable of doing something so hurtful and disrespectful. During this 8-month period, her and I had drinks, dinner, etc. with this guy. He is a coworker, who conveniently had just got divorced and who I had considered a friend. So here we are having dinner, drinks, hanging out, and the whole time my wife and him were putting on an act like everything was normal. I told her that as of that day, either he's dead to you or I am. And the crushing blow came. She said she wants to continue seeing him. She says she loves me and loves him. I asked how she could equate almost 7 years of building a life, love and relationship to an 8-month affair. She couldn't answer that but said she was sorry that she hurt me. I told her if she was truly sorry she would have broken it off and put her attention on us. I am stunned, pissed, embarrassed that I didn't see the signs, but most of all, I am sad and brokenhearted. I'm not going to beg to have her back. I have accepted my fate and will move on. If those of you who have gone through this have any advice, I appreciate it and thank you for taking time to read my story. My wife had been having an affair for 8 months with a recently divorced coworker. My wife and I had dinner, drinks, and hung out like we were all friends, and they acted completely normal the whole time. She said she wants to keep seeing him but still loves me. So here's what has transpired since that post. Her whole family knows and they are not happy with her at all. They have all reached out to me giving support and telling me they love me and I will always be family to them. Her sister is pissed and doesn't even want to see her. She has claimed that after we divorce she will not be anywhere near this guy, nor bring her son around him. They have been really close as sisters and her taking my side was huge. I have made myself unavailable and busy this whole weekend to her. I have set up a consultation with a lawyer for this Tuesday to start divorce proceedings. I have begun looking at housing options but may try to buy her out and keep the house. Also, since she makes more than me, I will be filing for spousal support. I know there is still a rough read ahead and some work to be done, but I am feeling good about where things are going. I think some folks had asked whether we have kids. We do not. We have a dog who will be coming with me since I did all the work to raise her and train her, so why less complicated and no reason for her to contact me after I am gone. Am I the a-hole for making my son-in-law leave my house? The other day, we were celebrating my wife's 47th birthday, and it turned into quite the mess. My daughter, Kat, now 24, is married to David, 25, and let's just say David and I don't exactly see eye to eye. However, for the sake of my daughter, I've tried to put our differences aside. We had a nice family gathering during the day, and as evening rolled in, we decided to have a dinner party with everyone. All seemed fine until I noticed David drinking more than his fair share. As the night wore on, I noticed my nephew's wife, Lainey, looking uncomfortable as she went into the kitchen. David followed her, and alarm bells started ringing. Something was off. I approached them and asked what was happening. Lainey hesitated but eventually told me that David, due to his excessive drinking, was making her uncomfortable with his inappropriate flirting. I couldn't let this escalate, so I told David that he needed to leave immediately. I knew that if word got out about his behavior, it would turn into a massive, embarrassing scene for everyone. However, David refused to budge, and that's when I lost my patience. I demanded that he leave again, and he made a big scene, shouting profanities at me. This outburst caught the attention of everyone at the party. Kat, understandably, wanted to know why I was kicking David out. I couldn't reveal the real reason, as much as I disliked David, because I love my daughter and want her to be happy. So, I couldn't explain, and she assumed it was just another chapter in our ongoing feud. She got upset, sided with David, and they both left in a huff. Now, it's been days, and my wife is furious with me, claiming that I ruined her birthday because of a little feud. I haven't heard from my daughter since that night.
What are you still salty about years later? Growing up, my family was pretty poor. A few quick examples of how poor we were. A. I often went to school without paper and needed supplies because money just wasn't there. B. My mom got super sick with some sort of flu and my sister and I dug change out of the couch, the dirty clothes basket, and other places just to buy our mom medicine. C. We often had to cut open the toothpaste tube in order to scrape out the last bit of paste. Anyhow, being poor like that as a child was challenging, but you get by. You get used to life like that when it's all you know. In 5th grade, however, an amazing opportunity came up, a 5-day trip to science camp. The school held fundraisers and bake sales to help pay the way for kids like me, and I was super excited to be going. The night before leaving, my mom packed everything she could from the list provided. Instead of a sleeping bag, I had an old and used comforter. Instead of a travel toothbrush set, I took my own and mom packed my toothpaste into a used lip balm container that she'd sanitized. Instead of pajamas, I was given an old sweatshirt that was my stepdad's and a pair of second-hand sweatpants, and so on. Literally everything I packed was used, second-hand, and worn, but I didn't care. I was so excited to be going to science camp with my class. Next day, we meet up. Everyone packs their gear into the bus and I, with a rope holding my blanket in a bundle, load my stuff, clamber onto the bus, and soon we're on our way. We make it to camp, get a quick breakdown of camp rules, activities, and trips, and get assigned to our cabins. At this point, it might help to add that my school and several others booked the camp together. So, I was mixed into a cabin away from my class. No big deal to me. I was looking forward to making friends and memories. So, I dragged my stuff to the cabin. First bunk I find, I claim, which is where I encountered my first problem. Just about every girl in my cabin is from the same school and they all want to bunk together. My stuff was literally dumped onto the floor when I ran to use the washroom. The cabin leader decided it was easier to just move me, so I got moved all the way to the back of the cabin, away from all but 2 other girls. Whatever, it's first night. I figure it's gonna be great that a rough start isn't anything. Anyhow, we get through the evening, we do the activity sign-ups, we eat dinner, we go to bed. Tuesday morning comes, and I'm excited. Archery and a fossil hike are what I signed up for. Well, you guessed it, I get bumped because the activities lists are too full. Okay, it's cool, I can still do something else. I managed to find a night hike activity that accepted sign-ups. It's at night, so I have to mill about waiting. I go into the learning cabin, I look at their pickled specimens, I talk to the camp ranger, I kill time. Night comes and we finally go out on our hike, to the lake with a giant dead goldfish in it. There are loads of crawfish and we feed them ham and learn about their environment. It's not what I had hoped for, but it was cool enough. Eventually we head back to our respective cabins for bed. Tomorrow will be better, after all. Wednesday comes, and it's only the same story as Tuesday. I signed up for clay arts and a nature walk, but clay arts is too full. Fine. I take my nature walk, we find a dead rabbit, we learn about edible plants, we discuss nature. Nothing to complain about. It was really fun, except for that evening.
My friend got a DUI and I tried to break him out despite being a military police officer, so I got in big trouble when I was caught. I was in the military but we were stateside. There was a group of fellow buddies with me. This was the night we all learned what a Jaeger bomb shot was. We had round after round after round after round. The night went by extremely fast and my friend Brian decided he would drive myself and my roommate home to our off-base appointment. We left the bar and it was not long before we were pulled over. Turns out that a sedan having 3 21-year-olds leaving a bar at 2 a.m. near a military base is suspicious. The police officer knew we were all drunk when he got to Brian's car window and we all admitted to it. The police officer gave Brian a breathalyzer test which he promptly failed. The office handcuffed Brian and put him in the back of the police car. The officer then asked myself and the other passenger, who again was my roommate, if we would like to take a breath test and see if we were below the legal limit to drive Brian's car to our apartment so that it would not be towed and therefore would save Brian the impound charges. We took our breath tests and promptly failed. This is when things begin to get weird. The officer left us with Brian's car with the car keys also. The officer drove off with Brian to take him to the local jail for booking. To this day I don't know why he left us with Brian's keys. From the time the officer pulled us over it had been approximately 20 minutes. My roommate and I had an oh-so-bright idea. This idea was followed by several ideas that escalated very quickly. My roommate and I were military police officers. We felt bad that we let our friend drive us home and he got into trouble. With an extreme lack of judgment and against all of our common sense, we decided that we would drive Brian's car back to our apartment. We didn't have far to drive, but this doesn't excuse the absolute stupidity that we were acting upon. At some point between the time we started driving Brian's car and the time we arrived at our apartment, my roommate and I came up with a grand plan of how to get Brian out of jail. This was a multi-staged plan and I will break it down. Get Brian's car back to our apartment. Brush our teeth and put gum in. Shave and get into our military police uniforms. Attach our guard belts to our waists so that we look like we were on duty. Call my precinct on base and inform the dispatch not to call the jail that Brian was at. I knew who was working dispatch that night and that person just so happened to owe me a big favor. I made it clear that I would not explain why I was asking dispatch not to call this specific jail. Dispatch agreed not to call. I called the jail Brian was at and told them that I was my command and that I was checking to see if any military members were in their jail. They stated yes and stated Brian's name. I asked if it would be okay if we come and take Brian into custody. They said yes. Switch cars. Leave Brian's car at our apartment and drive one of our own to the jail. One last pep talk and walk out the door. We arrive at the jail and it's around 4 a.m. and very quiet, no other cars in the jail parking lot. We go to the jail entrance and ring a buzzer. A corrections officer speaks to us through an intercom system. I speak into the intercom while looking into a camera and I inform the corrections office that we are there to take custody of Brian. They said okay. It took about 25 minutes before we heard anything further, and as you could imagine we were scared out of our minds and it felt like an eternity. It felt like the exact fear you would feel if you were trying to break a friend out of jail. Then without warning a loud buzzer sound goes off. The large thick metal door in front of us slides open and on the other side we see 2 corrections officers. And Brian in handcuffs. I've never personally seen a ghost, but at that moment I knew what a person's face would look like if they ever had seen one. Brian's jaw dropped and his face went extremely flush, ghost white. I greeted the corrections officers and told them I will put my handcuffs on Brian so that they can have theirs back. Before doing so I turned Brian around and gave him a pat down. I swapped the handcuffs and that was it, I had Brian in custody. My roommate and I thanked the corrections officers and we turned and walked away with our hearts beating out of our chest. We are walking across the parking lot to our vehicle when my roommate whispers to me, "Don't get in the car, don't get in the car." At that moment a police officer walks up behind us and looks us dead in the eyes, then asks us, "Aren't you two the passengers of the vehicle I just pulled over tonight?" It was this moment that our hearts stopped and so did our breathing. Like I said, the parking lot was empty when we arrived. No one inside or outside of the jail had caught on to us. It just so happens that the arresting officer arrived at the jail while we were in the Sally Port waiting for Brian to be released to us. The arresting officer was just sitting there doing paperwork in his patrol car in the jail parking lot as we walked Brian out of the jail into our car. I'm sure you can guess what happened next. Yep, we all got put in jail. About 8 a.m. our command actually came and got us. We got back to base and they told me to go home and that they would call me when they needed me and to get my things in order because this was not going to go over well. I did just that and then arrived back at my command 24 hours later, and I did not leave for 45 days and then we were deployed again, so I never got off base again during that stateside stay. I was punished to the fullest extent of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, the military law. I was a disappointment to many people because of this. I felt ashamed and I took my punishment. All the while I was the most famous person at my command. I represented what it was to have your fellow military personnel's back 100%. Everyone heard about this attempt to break Brian out of jail and we were practically celebrities. To this day I cannot figure how in the hell I had the stupidity to try and pull this off. I am proud to say that this did not ruin my military career and that I did get to serve out my enlistment and be discharged honorably. Needless to say I have never FU this bad ever again in my life. The military absolutely did not condone this behavior, but in some sort of way we were looked at as the most loyal friends a person could have. Our entire command had camaraderie like never before. It was crazy, insane, and stupid.
My greedy in-laws wanted me to pay for everyone at the table during night dinner, so I silently got up and walked out. I recently inherited a good amount of money from my mom. I keep the money in a separate account as I still haven't decided what to do with it and I didn't want it to go to waste. I noticed my husband constantly bringing up the inheritance money and making countless suggestions as to how I should spend it. Another thing is that he expects me to pay for nearly everything the past couple of weeks. For Nye, my husband and I met up with his family at a restaurant to celebrate. It was going fine until I found out that I was expected to pay for everyone at the table. My husband's mom joked about paying for dinner out of my inheritance pocket, which made me livid, but I showed no reaction. Just silently paid for my own food/drinks. Then got up and made my way out of the restaurant. They were shouting after me like a crowd and my husband tried to get me to come back, but I drove home. He got back at 3 a.m. yelling at me saying I was pathetic to get up and walk out on him and his family after they relied on me to pay for their food and thought I was gracious enough to do it, but they were wrong. He said I humiliated him and family and that what I did was an attempt to get back at them for not being able to help mom when she was sick. Not true is all I'm gonna say. He is mad and is saying that I caused a huge rift between his family and me when it wouldn't have hurt me to pay for the celebratory dinner.
I found out my girlfriend peed in my food whenever she was angry with me. I feel so dirty, I feel so grossed out and betrayed, and I keep hoping that all of this is a nightmare. I threw out any containers of food I had just because this crap got me so paranoid. I feel so violated and I don't know who to tell. My girlfriend, now ex, was a very chill and laid back person, even in arguments. Well, we were talking about how the submarine goers don't really deserve sympathy. Apart from the 19-year-old, rest in peace, her take was that a life is a life, My take was that there was more and more information coming out about the trip that any sane person would go, oh, this is dangerous. Anyway, I thought it was lighthearted because of how she always spoke calmly and even laughed at during some points, until she just ended it with, you know what? Don't talk to me. I tried to tell her it doesn't matter. She kept going, yeah, and basically telling me to shut up. So, here I am feeling like crap. I wake up in the middle of the night and she's not in our bed, whatever, I don't control her, right? And I heard the door of the bathroom open, so I figured she just went to the toilet. I feel gross detailing this out, but I could hear the pee hitting the bowl, but she didn't flush. She opened the door again and I heard her walking away. So, I was worried and went to check, and this is where my whole life becomes hell. I see her in the living room, with one of the food containers that had some leftovers. Next to her was a glass of, you guessed it, I could distinguish by the horrid yellow color and smell. Of course, I saw her pour it in, and I immediately screamed at her, demanding to know what the heck she thinks she's doing. She had those deer caught in headlight looks and flinched, causing her pee to stain the table and her hand. I kept screaming at her, and she started crying, saying she's sorry over and over. I told her I demand an explanation or she's free to call her mom and leave this instance. Apparently, the reason she's always so calm and happy the morning after arguments where she gets mad, is because she does this: she drinks a whole lot of water, and in the night when I sleep, she goes and pours it in food. Apparently this started with simply pouring it on my belongings. I was disgusted. I screamed at her some more and I don't even feel guilty that she cried. I told her to get out of my house or I'm calling the police. She tried to beg but eventually left. I sent her a message to get someone to get her stuff. That were over and blocked her. I don't even know what to say. I feel violated, disgusted. The fact she knew what she was doing, watched me eat it and never felt guilty, and I just, dang. Redditors, what's the most inconsiderate thing your sibling has done to your belongings? I recently purchased a new couch, and it has only been a week since I got it. 2 days ago, a friend of mine came over wearing shorts that unfortunately had a leakage stain. After she left, she called me hours later, angry that I didn't inform her about the stain. I honestly hadn't noticed it until she mentioned it, but then I looked at the couch where she was sitting, and there it was. I messaged her about it, and she responded with laughing emojis. I wouldn't be so upset if she weren't 35 years old. I'm just really frustrated because this furniture is brand new, not even a week old. The warranty doesn't cover this kind of issue. I used to be so happy about my new couch, and now all I can think about is the fact that it has her period blood on it. Cleaning up the stain was unpleasant, and unfortunately, the mark is still there. To clarify, I don't find having a period disgusting. What bothered me was that she didn't apologize or offer to help. I had to clean up her bodily fluid myself in an attempt to save the couch. She didn't even offer to clean it. Cleaning up an adult's period stain is not a pleasant task. You can try scrubbing away that brownish orange residue and see how it goes. I want to clarify that I am also a woman and have experienced my own fair share of leaks as a teenager. If she were younger or if my own daughter had done this, trust me, my reaction would not have been the same because it can be an embarrassing situation. But we are all adults here. I'm sure she didn't do it on purpose. My theory is that she didn't realize her period was coming and wore something thin. However, what angers me the most is that she didn't even try to fix the situation or offer an apology. It's also surprising to see the assumptions people are making about this stain. We took off the cushion cover, and the stain is on the stuffing and foam material. Luckily, a new cushion costs $150, so I'm going to purchase one and take a break from her for a while. Thank you all for your advice. I appreciate it. 911 operators, what's the most creative way someone asked for help when they couldn't explicitly say it? This is how an operator understood my creative way of asking for help. When I was about 14, I had one of those slide phones. This was around 2008. My brother was having an angry fit and he broke a window. My dad, who was abusive, came into the kitchen and found the broken glass. He flipped. My dad was yelling and screaming, then he started beating my brother with his fists. I called 911 and I was sobbing and he came over and slid my phone off, disconnecting the call. Edit, as I said in a comment, I don't think he knew it was the 911, he just turned his head and saw me on my phone crying. I was terrified. There was my dad, now next to me, breathing heavily. It was so silent. I was terrified. He walks away to go bathroom. My brother's on the floor in front of me. My cell phone vibrates. The police operator calls back. I know my dad wouldn't be long and I was right. He came back just as the lady on the phone asked if everything was okay, saying that there was a disconnect from this number. I pretended they, the operator, were a friend looking for our mutual friend's house or something, I don't remember. I told them that they had the wrong address. I said it was 121, street name, they were looking for, not my address, 122, same street name. The lady seemed confused for a moment, because there was a pause, then asked if I needed help. I said yes. It's just across the street from 121, street. Can't miss it. No problem, Alyssa. I'll see you at school tomorrow. Then hung up. The police arrived 5 minutes later. 2 cars, 4 police. My dad tried to play it off but the police came in and took us outside to talk because my dad was looming over us.
I'm a bricklayer and I have carved my wife's name into a brick in almost every project I've undertaken. I started when I was 28 and just freshly married and I did it almost as a joke, for no reason in particular except to get a kick out of the work. And now I'm in my 40s and I have no intention of stopping. Sometimes it's mine and my wife's name written together, but most times it's just hers. It's a short name, only 5 letters, so it's easy and quick. I once mentioned it to my wife that me and my coworkers often write rubbish into the bricks before we lay them and that I had written in her name only. She laughed and said that it was a funny thought. I didn't tell her that in almost every project I've taken, not all, sometimes I forget, our names are there, hidden by the mortar. Probably a good number of homes built in the 2010s in the UK has our names or just her name etched within the walls somewhere. I don't think I'll tell her, I'm definitely too far in now. But now you guys know. Maybe your house has my wife's name in it, who knows, haha.
My superhero brother tried to rope my girlfriend. I, 27, met my fiancée, 25, almost 7 years ago when we were both studying at college. We met through mutual friends and about 1 year later we started dating. When she was introduced to my family, everyone was delighted with her, even my mother, who tends to be somewhat reserved with foreigners. At this point I must mention my brother, 29, before the incident, he was my superhero. I always admired him because he never was intimidated by the local children and because he always was very protective of me and our sister, 22. He always reminded us that we should never look down just because someone tried to annoy us and that we had as much right to live here as anyone, and when I introduced him to my girlfriend they became good friends. Time passed and my girlfriend was quite close to my family, especially my siblings. Given the closeness to my family, it was usual for her to hang out with other of my relatives. She would go shopping with my sister and mother, play billiards with me and my cousins, and was at every party my family organized. It was at one of these parties, in which me and my family ended up very drunk, to the point that I ended up sleeping on the floor of my parents' living room. When the party ended, my girlfriend was behaving very weird, and when I asked her what was going on, she told me, "I think your brother tried to kiss me." The surprise that she gave me when hearing those words was so great that any effect of the alcohol disappeared, and I asked her to tell me everything that had happened. She told me that several of the guests went to the roof to drink up there to feel the wind or something like that. Little by little they all left until in the end only she and my brother were left up there. They drank a while more, and while they were talking, she noticed that he was staring at her, and out of nowhere he bent down trying to kiss her, but she was faster and dodged it. The atmosphere became very uncomfortable after that and she left there. When she finished telling me what happened, I took her to her house, and later I talked to my brother and asked him to clarify the whole story. He basically told me the same story, but from his point of view. He apologized and said that he was so drunk that he wasn't thinking and that he apologized for doing that. Just remembering that conversation makes my blood boil, because at that moment I thought that it had only been a minor incident, something that could be solved with dialogue and establishing some limits. I could never think about what was going to happen next. After what happened at that party, the relationship between my brother and I was uncomfortable. We almost never spoke, and when we did it was as polite as possible, almost as if we were strangers. The only person who knew what had happened, besides off the three of us, was my younger sister, because on one occasion when she and my girlfriend were talking, she asked if she knew why my brother and I had become distant from what she told her the story. My girlfriend and I decided not to comment on the rest of my family because we didn't want the relationship to fracture further. After a few months after that, my family organized a party where they invited a lot of people, friends, family and people from our community. It was at that party where my girlfriend and my brother met again. At that point I thought that enough time had passed since the kiss incident and that it could be the first step for things to return to the normal. At some point during the party I lost track of my girlfriend and I started looking for her. I looked for her for a while without seeing her, so I assumed that maybe she was with my sister, but something passed through my head that I decided to look upstairs. While I was going up the stairs I started to hear strange noises in one of the rooms, and when I opened the door, my brother was pushing my girlfriend against the bed, covering her mouth and trying to put her hand under her dress while she was trying to fight back. I didn't think twice about it, and as soon as I saw them I pounced on my brother and started hitting him. My girlfriend left the room as quickly as she could and went downstairs to ask for help. When my father and uncles came up I was still hitting the crap out of my brother. His face was full of blood, as was my knuckles. My father was the one who had to separate us, but I kept insulting him and hitting him. In the end he was able to separate us, and then he took me out of the room while my uncles checked how bad my brother was. Outside the room my father asked me what the hell had happened to make me act like that. It took me a while to be able to formulate words, but finally I told him that I had just seen that my brother had tried to abuse my girlfriend. My dad, I know I was in shock for a while. He sat on the floor and put his hand on his forehead and was completely silent for about 10 minutes until my uncles called him because they were going to take my brother to the hospital. After they took my brother I went to look for my girlfriend and found her talking to my sister about what just had happened. I said goodbye to my sister and we left. All the way to our house she couldn't stop crying. She was confused, angry, and by the time we got home she kept crying until she fell asleep, and that was her routine for a couple of days until little by little she could talk again. In those days my family kept me informed of my conditioned brother. I had broken his nose and dislocated his jaw. My mother was the one in denial, incredulous that her son was capable of something like that, but I didn't think much about it because in the end each person reacts different, and also to a certain point I understood why my mom was trying to explain my brother's actions. The last thing I heard from him was that after he left the hospital everyone turned their backs on him for what he did. They fired him from his work and left town. The following weeks I cut off almost any contact with the outside world and focused on helping my girlfriend. To say the least, she was handling the situation as best she could. She was still very scared about what had happened and had no energy at all, but after almost a month of being home, she had to go to work, but she returned after a few hours because she told me that she couldn't stop feeling threatened, that she was in danger and that at any moment someone was going to try to do something bad to her. I overheard my wife telling her friends in graphic detail how good her insane ex was in bed, and now I'm questioning our entire marriage. I feel almost silly making this post because it's such a topic online these days and there's probably a billion other posts about it. In the past, I would have said the past is the past, they're with you now, but now that I've experienced it myself, everything is different. I've been with my wife for 4 years, married for 1. When we met, she was deep in therapy due to the trauma she got from a mentally messed up ex. I'm not gonna spill all of her business, but this dude really was a grade A lunatic and is likely either in an asylum or prison right now. Over time, We would sometimes laugh about his shenanigans together because he really was unreal. I'd tease her from staying with a dude like that for so long and she'd just say she was young and stupid as heck. Last night, we had 2 female friends over and I got sick from something we ate and went to lay down. I urged her to keep talking to our friends because she never really socialized much. At one point, I heard her mention her crazy ex. I listened in because the stories are absolutely hilarious and I knew our friends would die laughing. One of them asked my wife how the heck she dealt with his bull crap for a whole year. I expected her to say what she always said to me, I was just a grade A idiot, but things took a sharp turn. She kind of hushed her voice to a whisper and said this dude was a dang menace in bed. Their reactions were shocked and amused and my wife kept on and on. As much as I hate to recall what she said, I must add it if I want valid responses, so here we go. 1. They did the deed 4 times a day, every single day. 2. He was never ever soft apparently. 3. He did her anytime, anywhere, and was willing to do it in front of anyone. 4. He'd go downtown while she was on her period, apparently she loved this. 5. He ate her caboose, which she claimed she didn't want me to do. 6. He woke her up with love making every single morning. 7. He did her while she was on the phone with her grandparents, apparently she loved this. 8. He had her in positions she didn't know existed. 9. He spit in her mouth, apparently she loved this too. 10. He left marks all over her body. 11. He took her body whenever the hell he wanted and she could do nothing about it. And sadly that isn't even all, but screw remembering more. She was just waxing poetic about this dude's bedroom skills right there in our living room while I lay 12 feet away. She ended it with I'm glad I got rid of him, but let's just say, there was some good in him. Our friends were just cackling and dying. I was mortified. I now kind of feel like our marriage is a sham. Am I the safe dude she sought comfort in after having her crazy hot unavailable dude? I don't want to be anyone's safe dude. Not to mention she never said anything about this to me, which is probably a good thing, but I feel like she intentionally misled me about their relationship. Am I wrong to question everything? I don't even think I can look at her the same way now. Edit. I decided to just be totally honest with my wife and mentioned what I heard. She was extremely apologetic to the point of tears. Said she had drank way too much and regretted saying any of that at all, even before she knew I heard. She even sent a long message to our friends apologizing for her behavior long before I even made this post. Regarding what she said, she did admit that all of it was true, albeit slightly exaggerated for comedic effect. She made clear these points. She adores lovemaking with me and he was no better. She was raving about how she felt at the time, not now. She had only one partner before him who was very vanilla, so it was new and exciting for her. I am free to do everything he did to her, and she would never say otherwise. The lovemaking was insane because he was insane, and those two things are permanently linked to her. She doesn't see him as an alpha or a bad boy type, she sees him as a screws-loose love-making fiend and recognizes that what he did with her, he would have done with anyone. He never even made her finish, made me feel a lot better, not going to lie there. She felt absolutely horrible and told me she understands if I want a divorce but begged me to forgive her for her drunken stupor. I could see in her eyes that she was sincere, so I'm going to try to forgive her, but it will take a long time for her words to leave my brain regardless. Update. Currently, my wife is at work and I'm a mess at home. For the edit in my post, I decided to be honest with my wife about how I felt about what I heard. She was extremely apologetic, to the point of tears, and assured me that she was just drunk and what she had with her ex was nothing compared to what she has with me. I was ready to forgive her, but when I woke up in the early morning to all of your guys' replies, my head started running in circles. I got the sudden desire to check her phone. I didn't even think I would see anything. I just wanted 100,000% assurance because I knew I'd never feel at peace otherwise. I waited for her to wake up and asked if I could see it. She was a little weird about it but ultimately said she understood and unlocked it for me. I checked everything message related, texts, Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, Instagram DMs, Discord DMs, Reddit DMs, etc. etc. I saw nothing suspicious in the slightest. Then I saw a really interesting looking app and went to click on it for curiosity's sake. My wife freaked out and forcefully grabbed her phone back. My heart instantly dropped. She said it was just a journal, but she didn't want me to see her weird and embarrassing thoughts. Her intense reaction made me kind of paranoid though. I told her I knew she was a weirdo when we got together and those thoughts wouldn't bother me. She still refused to show me and said she deserved privacy. I started worrying that it was a secret messaging app, so I asked her to at least let me make sure it was really a journal. She gave in and gave me her phone but told me to give it back as soon as I could see it was a journal. So I opened it and it was indeed a journal, but a few headlines popped out at me that made my heart drop, one of them being "It's been 5 years, get the heck out of my brain already." She left her ex 5 years ago. She tried to grab her phone back but I went into the bathroom. She was freaking out and begging me to give it back, but I needed to read this particular entry for my peace of mind. My worst fear was a reality and she was indeed talking about her ex, even name dropping him. She talked about not understanding why she couldn't stop thinking about him, how she had constant wet dreams about him, how she missed how his hands and lips felt on her body. It was a nightmare to read, but I kept going, partially hoping to see some sign that it wasn't as bad as I thought. That sign never came. On the plus side, it was obvious that she indeed hadn't spoken to him since before we met, so cheating wasn't a concern. But it was equally as obvious that she's been thinking about him for our entire relationship. I scrolled through other entries and half of them were about him in some way, either how badly he traumatized her or how much she missed being intimate with him. Time came for her to go to work, so I handed her her phone. She was crying and apologizing like crazy and begging me to see that she loved me. She was just sick in the head. She said she thinks her brain is permanently messed up and she hoped that with time these torturous thoughts would fade, but they haven't. I told her to go to work and I'd figure things out here. Now I'm here with zero clue on what to do. I love this woman. Never loved any woman more, and I've been with my fair share. But I know her words will never, ever, ever leave my mind. Every time I look at her, I'll wonder if she's being tortured with thoughts of him. Every time we make love, I'll wonder if it's me she's seeing. I hate that most of you were right. 4 years utterly wasted. Edit. Some of you may be disappointed, but I have decided to get my wife therapy and work on this. She was in therapy when we met, but she didn't even tell that therapist, who was more like a school counselor, about her ex, just her resulting angst and depression. She needs to speak to a professional about the situation with him specifically. Personally, I've come to the conclusion that her tie to him is a sign of mental illness more than anything. If she really wanted him, she would have reached out at least once all of these years. He didn't cut contact, she did. She even showed me proof of him begging her to talk to him again for the entire year afterwards. I'm not happy about what happened, and I will be in therapy for it as well. I love her, and I know she just is not at her healthiest mentally. If after this therapy she still feels the same way, then I will leave her. But I can't leave until I can make sure. Thanks for all of your support. Sincerely, I am not accepting my best friend's best man role. My best friend, S, has been in my life since freshman year of high school, about 15 years, and has been in a long-term relationship with his C. Her and I got along okay until she tried to set me up with her best friend, L. We never got anything close to serious in a relationship, because even though we said we were together, she cheated on me. C knew about it, and told US not to tell me. As best friends do, naturally, who told me. However, moving forward to more recent events, he asked me to be his best man in the wedding. Because even his own family can't stand C, they aren't attending, nor even invited. By the request of C, her family also isn't invited, as they asked her to receive psychological evaluation if they want to keep in contact.
The ceremony will include C, S, L as maid of honor, and myself as best man. However, it's also taking place in the backyard of a friend's house's backyard, whom I've never met. And for food after, they said they'll DoorDash chic father-in-law A for everyone there, and this is after a ballpark estimate on my part of spending $35,000 plus on wedding bands of their own choosing.
S's family has over multiple times called me more family than her, even after the engagement, and still holds C in bad light after what I'm told was an absolute berating of a member of the service staff at S's sister's wedding in Jamaica, also a wedding she never received a formal invitation to, where I've been told to my face that they had hoped I was S's +1 rather than C. C has also said that my current so will not be allowed to attend the wedding because she's never met her, even though my so and I worked together, and also C was the one who helped me get said job I still have today until she was fired for a mix of poor performance and bad attitude. My so's employment predates C's start date by at least 2 years, and our teams never worked directly together in my tenure there, 3+ years. I don't want to lose a friendship over this, but also in no way can support his decision, siding more with his family, which said I'll be welcome to be at the bar with them the same day and time. Am I the asshole? Am I the a-hole for hitting a gritty while my uncle had a heart attack? This is a really hard story for me to tell. I know it sounds stupid, but please don't judge me. My family lives across 4 countries, so we very rarely all get together and see each other. But a few days, for the first time in 6 years, the whole family met up at my grandfather's house. There were like 25 or 30 of us there, and it was a really great time. I'm the oldest of the kids there, I'm 19, so it was pretty much just me on babysitting duty for my 7 much younger cousins. I don't really mind this though, my cousins are all pretty cool. One of the things they always get really excited for is when I do something weird and funny in front of them. They're too old for the peekaboo, but I've noticed they really like it when I do Fortnite dances. I've been hitting the orange justice and the gritty in front of them all the time, and they always find it hilarious. Anyway, we were all in the living room after lunch, the adults were sitting in the main room, and I was behind the couches with the rest of the kids. As always, I was entertaining them with stupid stuff. On the couch, though, my uncle suddenly had a heart attack and collapsed. The adults rushed around him and started calling an ambulance. However, during this whole thing, I was facing the other direction, and didn't know what was going on. Because of this, basically when my uncle collapsed, I started hitting a gritty to entertain my cousins. It was only when my dad grabbed me and asked what was wrong with me that I realized what was going on. The family was pretty angry at me for clowning around while my uncle was in serious medical trouble. My uncle ended up dying that day. Am I the a-hole for this? It really horrifies me that the last thing my uncle saw could have been me hitting a Fortnite dance.
This is how you escape sleep paralysis. For those of you who didn't know, when we fall asleep, our bodies release a chemical into the part of our brain that controls movement. The chemicals are glycine and GABA. These essentially freeze your muscles, rendering you incapable of movement. This is done to keep us from acting out our dreams and injuring ourselves. Sleepwalkers' bodies don't release enough of this chemical, hence the walking. Now let's talk about sleep paralysis. Have you ever experienced that? If you wake up during sleep paralysis, there is a period in which you are literally paralyzed until your body realizes that you are awake. Additionally, if you are a lucid dreamer, you will often be aware of your paralysis while sleeping. Needless to say, sleep paralysis is terrifying, like claustrophobia to the nth degree. Many people also perceive demons or other things holding them down. One of the most infamous of these is known as the old hag. To escape it, all you must do is focus on a small muscle like a single finger, though toes work well too. Your brain mainly focuses on freezing large muscles, so if you try, your fingers are able to twitch. As soon as you move them, the chemical in your brain will begin to dissipate. When you are freely moving your fingers, move on to a bigger muscle, like your hand. When your hand is moving freely, try your arm. Bit by bit, you can slowly escape paralysis until you are fully mobile again. This method works very well for me, and I have never been stuck in paralysis for long because of it. Stay calm and focus on moving your fingers. Learning to relax is the only thing that would help. Sometimes you'd fall back asleep and everything would be fine once you woke up the second time.
The tale of the poop thrower. When I was younger, I attended an all-girls Christian summer camp. One of my fellow campers, Ariana, was a mean and nasty girl. One night, she had apparently clogged on the toilets with poop. She didn't want anybody to find out that it was her, so she grabbed her poop out of the toilet with her bare hands. She looked around for a trash barrel or any place to hide it, but found nothing. She ran out of the bathroom, through the cabin we were all sitting in, and outside into the woods. When she got outside, she hurled the poop deep into the woods, and forever earned the title poop thrower.
My deadbeat ex-husband said that he didn't want to give up his youth and left me while I was pregnant. Now, he's begging to come back in our lives because he became infertile. I met my ex Tom when I was 17 and fell pregnant at 18 when he was 24. I initially did not want the baby, but Tom convinced me to keep him as Tom was finishing a graduate scheme in his current job and was going to get a massive pay rise and could afford to look after us. I was naive, young, and stupid and took his words seriously. We essentially had a shotgun marriage. My parents at this point were deeply religious and so was Tom, so everyone thought this was best. 7 months into my pregnancy, Tom just left me, and his parents stopped speaking to me. He said he didn't want to give up his youth to be a father and he made the wrong decision. I was devastated, but over time, I got over it with the support of my parents and family. After what happened, I didn't speak to Tom ever again. Tom also is not on the birth certificate. When I was 25, I met my current husband John and he was a single dad. The mother of his child tragically passed away and he's been raising his daughter all alone. We bonded over being single parents and eventually fell in love and got married. John treats Luke like he is his son and I treat Julia as if she is my biological daughter. We have a wonderful family unit and as far as I know, both kids are happy. Luke calls John his dad and introduces him as dad to everyone. I have told Luke the story of his biological dad and he has told me he has no other dad than John. 2 weeks ago, I received a Facebook request from Tom, and out of curiosity I accepted and told John about it immediately and he thought it was strange. I think I messed up here by accepting it. Tom told me he was sorry and leaving was the biggest regret of his life. He told me he married a second time and they got divorced because it turns out his health decisions have made him infertile. I don't know how true that is, but that's what he said, and Luke is the only child he has. He said he wants to bond with Luke and Luke deserves to know who his real dad is. I went crazy and told him he's not allowed to go near Luke whatsoever and he's not allowed to see him. I told him he is not on the birth certificate and he has no legal right to see him, and the cruelty in his actions when he left me whilst pregnant showed me his true character and I'm not letting him near my family. I deleted him from my friends list on Facebook and John has been supporting me through this and reassuring me that everything will be okay. Luke knows Tom has been in contact with me recently and does not want to speak to Tom. Yesterday, I received an email from Tom about how he found my email. I do not know, but he's threatening legal action and called me a vengeful bitch. Update: I have emailed several lawyers I found online wanting advice. Some Googling of UK law says that, if not named on the child's birth certificate, a father has no legal and parental rights regarding that child. However, a father can apply for a parental responsibility order, or enter a parental responsibility agreement with the child's mother to gain parental rights to the child. I will hopefully have updates when I manage to speak to some people tomorrow, but so far it looks like he has no rights and needs to apply for parental rights.
Generally calm people, what made you lose your absolute crap that time? My son was maybe 8 months old and had recently diagnosed as profoundly deaf. Deaf kids will often inhale to make vibrations and noise that they can somewhat hear for stimulation. We were on pins and needles as I had just lost my job and our insurance and the cochlear implant surgery was going to cost us $170,000. We'd have to sell the house and one of the cars. We needed a break and our in-laws took us to the food court at a local mall. Our boy started to inhale and gasp. He needs a beating. An obese 20-something said no so quietly to her friends at the table next to us. I rarely curse in public and am generally non-confrontational, but a stream of insulting profanity issued from my mouth for a good 10 minutes that would have put a sailor to shame. I found it couldn't stop and it got on the verge of Bukowski and poetry. I insulted her, her mother, her weight, and her pinched-faced friends. I launched into the smell of her twat, how obese she was, how she'd only be able to reproduce with a blind intoxicated moron with a death wish, as she was uglier than the devil's a-hole on fire with the crap of hell. And it only progressed from there. Female Lee Ermey's Marine drill sergeant from Full Metal Jacket would have told me to tone it down a bit. I told her he was deaf and that we couldn't stop it, and this was a goddamn food court in a pissant southern town filled with pissant inbred motherfing hellspawn redneck ignorant mutant troglodytes that embarrass normal troglodytes. The food court was silent and all the eyes were upon us. And then it progressed from there. She got up and left crying. I can honestly say the whole rant was involuntary, like a puss-filled boil popping and draining in a torrent. I had never done anything like this before and have not done it since. I feel bad for her to this day. My nasty two-timing wife cheated on me with my best friend, so I ruined their life forever. Craphead and Sarah have been like family to my wife and I for several years, practically ever since we moved in across the street from them. The four of us were extremely tight. Our kids are the same age as theirs and are all good friends. We were one big family unit. We did dinner together a few times a week. We went on vacations together. I truly saw Craphead as a brother, and my wife and Sarah were very close too. 5 months ago, I was completely blindsided by the discovery of an affair between my wife and Craphead. My wife had left her email open on our computer, and I saw an email from her to her longtime therapist saying that Craphead would be joining her at an upcoming session again. What the hell? My mind started racing. Why in the world would Craphead be going to her therapy sessions without my knowledge? I did a search and found some other emails to and from the therapist proving that Craphead had been going to sessions together with her for about 6 weeks. I checked our mobile phone account and discovered that, since late summer, they had been exchanging hundreds of texts every day, peaking at nearly 500 per day by the holidays. Speaking of the holidays, my wife and I hosted both of our families, parents, siblings, etc., for both Thanksgiving and Christmas dinner, and Craphead and Sarah joined us either for dinner or after dinner on both holidays. Text records showed that the entire time that they were at our house celebrating with our families, my wife and Craphead were texting each other across the room. They were doing that pretty much every time the four of us hung out, for months. And, all day every day just in general. But what bothers me the most is that they were doing it with Sarah and I right there. I confronted my wife with the evidence and she admitted that yes, she and Craphead had fallen in love. It just happened. I don't know how. But, I love him and I just don't feel anything for you anymore, I'm sorry. They had gone on a school district trip together, something had happened in her hotel room, and things had moved quickly from there. She explained, as I lay face down on the couch, unable to look at her, that they had already made plans to move out and divorce me and Sarah, and while they didn't plan to move in together immediately because of the kids, they'd probably do so eventually. The meetings with the therapist were supposedly mostly for the purpose of finding a way to break this to me and Sarah as gently as possible, because they were so very concerned for our well-being. Sarah and I are fairly certain that they weren't planning on telling us about the affair at all, and were simply going to discover their feelings for one another several months down the line, after they'd come up with some other reason to divorce the two of us. My wife moved out 2 months ago. I was, and still am, utterly destroyed. I cry every day. I cried writing the first few paragraphs of this story just now. I worry nonstop about the impact on our kids. But I am also not exactly a shrinking violet when I feel that I've been wronged. And in this case I was, objectively, very, very wronged. So, a couple of years ago, Craphead ran for a Board of Education seat as a pretty extreme underdog. I helped him with his campaign materials and debate prep, and my wife, a well-known school district employee, this becomes important later, got the word out as best she could. Much to our surprise, he actually won in a squeaker, by just a few dozen votes. Being on the board became the center of Craphead's world. He joined every committee that he could. This turned into the foundation of his affair with my wife, as they were constantly going to school events and meetings together on evenings and weekends. Once I discovered the affair, my thoughts turned pretty quickly to revenge, and it occurred to me that an extramarital affair between a member of the Board of Education and an employee of the school district was at least bad politics and possibly violated district policy. Making things far worse for them was that my wife was in the running for an open administrative position, and everyone knew that she was more or less guaranteed the job and the major pay raise that came with it. She had just finished her master's degree in school administration, at the urging of her principal and the superintendent, so that she could be promoted to this specific position. I had plenty of evidence of the affair, texts from both of them admitting to it, text records showing that they were texting hundreds of times a day, emails to and from the therapist, etc. I considered simply emailing all of the evidence to the board and the superintendent, but felt like I, as the grieving, betrayed spouse, might not be seen as a credible source. So instead, I invented a fictitious furious friend who was planning on showing up to the next board meeting and publicly shaming the two of them for their affair. I told my wife that I'd tried to talk this person down but couldn't guarantee that they wouldn't show up and humiliate them publicly. As I expected, this led Craphead to conclude that the only option was for him to preemptively admit the affair to the board. The superintendent subsequently recommended that Craphead resign, which he did. Sarah said that he was utterly humiliated and crushed, and barely got out of bed for a few days afterward. Once word of the affair and Craphead's resignation started getting around, the superintendent, a longtime friend of both my wife and Craphead, contacted my wife and tearfully informed her that it was no longer politically appropriate for her to be promoted to an administrative position within the district. The position that had been lined up for her was later filled by an outside candidate. This sent waves of confusion and rumor throughout the district, as it was pretty well known that my wife was getting the job. The day after she was informed that she wasn't getting the promotion, my wife and I, despite our crumbling marriage, took our son out to breakfast together on his birthday, and a parent stopped by our table to congratulate her on her new role. She said, "Thanks," then excused herself to go cry in the bathroom for a while. I let the dust settle for a couple of weeks, and then, right before my wife moved out, let them in on my little secret. There was never a furious friend threatening to expose them in the first place. Just me. Word of all of this has gotten around our fairly small town, which Craphead grew up in and my wife has worked in for nearly 20 years. My wife refuses to talk to me about how things are at work now, but I've heard from some people I know in the district that her formerly spotless reputation has taken a major hit. Craphead, formerly a gregarious social presence in our neighborhood and at events and pubs in town, has completely gone underground and barely emerges to mow his lawn. He's moving out soon, to a shitty little townhouse which is all he can afford due to all the child support he's going to have to pay his wife. My wife and Craphead claim that they plan on trying to make things work together, despite all the public humiliation. I wish them lots of luck with that. I'm sure it will be a lot of fun to show their faces together in town. People who've had a right place, right time moment. What's your most astonishing I can't believe I was their story? Life is a series of moments, some mundane, some extraordinary, but there was one moment in my life that was so astonishing, so serendipitous, that it felt like the universe had conspired to put me in the right place at the right time. I was in New York City, on a business trip. One evening, after a long day of meetings, I decided to take a walk in Central Park. It was a beautiful evening, The park was bustling with people, and the city was alive with energy. As I was walking, I saw a crowd gathering near the Bethesda fountain. Curious, I decided to see what was happening. As I got closer, I saw a man standing on the edge of the fountain, holding a small box in his hand. Suddenly, the man got down on one knee and opened the box, revealing a sparkling diamond ring. He was proposing to his girlfriend, right there in the middle of Central Park. The crowd erupted in cheers, and the woman, tears streaming down her face, said yes. But here's where the story takes an astonishing turn. The man, overwhelmed with emotion, accidentally dropped the ring into the fountain. The crowd gasped, and the man looked devastated. But before anyone could react, I jumped into the fountain and started searching for the ring. After a few tense moments, I found the ring. I handed it to the man, and the crowd erupted in cheers again. The man thanked me profusely, and I was hailed as a hero. That experience was a right place, right time moment for me. It was an astonishing incident, a moment of serendipity that I still can't believe I was a part of. I'm starting to fall in love with my wife, but I don't know how to deal with it. This is all a very complicated and sad situation. About 4 years ago, my wife of 8 years passed away due to complications after the birth of our second son. I was deployed at the time and completely devastated. After flying home, I felt that nothing would make me happy again. I asked a sister of one of my Marine buddies, Cass, to help me out at home. She had been friends with my wife and she agreed in exchange for a place to stay. At the time, Cass was only 20 years old and in quite a bit of debt at the fault of her extremely abusive ex-boyfriend, who she had finally left about 3 months earlier. During the first few weeks of her helping out with the boys, she asked to borrow money to see a doctor due to shaking hands and bruises around her back door. I happily obliged. She was an angel, doing all of the cooking and cleaning and keeping my young family together. It turned out that she had developed some sort of neurological disorder, probably brought on by repeated abuse. At the time it seemed simple. I had good insurance, she needed health care, I never thought I'd be able to move on from my wife, and she was afraid of intimacy. I agreed that I would marry her but keep our platonic relationship. She promised not to burden me with her debt and we had a prenuptial agreement and all. I know that this is fraud of the government, but we were both so damaged and needed somebody, if not intimately. The past 3 years have been about as good as expected if not better. Cass is better than great. She keeps the house spotless, has food ready every night when I get home, and has been working overnight as a baker and almost has her debt paid off. With the boys she is a saint. She tells them about their mother, shows them pictures, takes the places for fun and even taught them how to read. Sometimes the 4-year-old calls her mommy but she shushes him and reminds him that name is Cass Ann. That mommy is the angel whose picture is above the fireplace. Once her debt is fully paid off, the kids are in school, and she saves up a bit of money, she is going to go into a nursing program. Our relationship is still platonic but very caring. I've cried on her shoulders more times than I can count and she's done the same. She seems to understand me whenever I'm hurt, upset or angry. The problem is that I think I might be falling for her. I've been noticing little things, her scent, her smile and her laugh. The way she smiles with her eyes when she sees me, how much my boys love her. Not to mention that she's gorgeous, hardworking and one of the strongest people I've ever encountered. A few nights ago I almost kissed her after we had put the boys to bed, and her hugs goodbye have started lasting a little bit longer. The other day she was taking a nap in my bed and I wanted to join her. Not have intimacy with her, just lay with her and hold and kiss her. I don't know what to do, or how to even bring this up. It's been 4 years since my wife died. I was thinking about asking her to get dinner, just the two of us and bringing it up. But what if she refuses? How can I gauge her interest? If it means anything, the other day she was having a hard time with the boys so I brought her home some of her favorite flowers. She was extremely giddy and gave me another lasting hug and a quick kiss on the lips. I was taken aback, but she pranced around, finishing dinner and putting the flowers in a vase. What does this mean? Revenge is a dish best served cold. Mine has been cooling for 10 years and counting. I, 40F, have been married to my husband, 44 male, for 20 years now. We have 2 kids, 16F and 13 male. My husband is what I would consider a high earner by middle-class standards. 10 years ago, and by complete coincidence, I found out that my husband has been cheating on me, with men, going back as far as before we got married. We live in a small town in the south of the USA, him coming out as gay will have consequences within the community. I believe that that is the only reason he has not come out to anyone. First, here's how I found out he was cheating on me. He got sloppy, left a credit card bill, for a secret card, in the pocket of a coat. While going through it I found all the telltale signs of infidelity, payments to a hotel in a nearby county, restaurant bills, gifts, flowers, protection, Uber rides. I started camping outside the hotel on days he told me he would be late, and I saw him bringing different men there. I am very good at compartmentalization and had a great poker face, comes with growing up in an abusive household, so I was able to give myself the time to cool off. And to come up with what I should do. First thing I did was getting an STD panel, since I didn't know how safe he was with his partners, it came out negative. Then I convinced him that we should use protection. Since I was having side effects from the pill, he was okay with it. I thought long and hard, and I came up to the decision that I was not going to confront him, nor was I going to leave him. He was able to provide me a really good lifestyle, one that I would never be able to afford with my high school diploma. We had a cleaning lady, a nanny to help with the kids, regular spa days and a country club, a new car every other year, luxury family vacations every year. He was a good dad, a good partner, the cheating aside, and really good in bed, but I was not going to let him have a single guilt-free week in his life. That would be my revenge. I started small, planning great date nights for us, telling him that I felt our relationship has cooled, that I wanted the spark back, then I would sometimes slip into conversation some tea about a cheating husband, or compliment the only gay couple we know for having the courage of being real men. Who were out and proud of themselves, subtle hints, not too obvious that he'd suspect I know. On the other hand, I would praise him as the perfect husband to anyone and everyone, especially if he was in earshot. The amount of guilt gifts I got was astounding. The man was even sending me flowers weekly. It continued the same way for years. I could literally see how much it was weighing on him, me. Well, my parents were part of a commune with the concept of free love. I was the same. I just considered myself in an open marriage. It seems that cheating is easier to ignore if you are not that big on monogamy in the first place, and my husband was keeping me satisfied, so I felt no need to find a partner of my own. Then 4 years ago, I guess he met the love of his life. He started seeing just the one guy. I was seriously thinking of ending the whole thing, especially since I have started a business by then and was able to bring in enough money to support myself and my kids while maintaining my lifestyle. But then he went and introduced his side piece to us. He brought him into our house, introduced him to our kids, and that was enough for me to keep tormenting him. Apparently he was a new friend he made while golfing. He started hinting at moving to another state, coincidentally one where it would be easier for him to come out. I refused. I told him that my business was here and I was not going to start over in another state. Also, the kids had their friends and extended family here. It would be unfair to uproot them. Then he started trying to start arguments. I guess he wanted us to fight. Then for me to ask for a divorce, I just stopped all those arguments in their tracks. I would just agree with whatever he said. He was right. I was wrong. And to make it up to him, how about a nice dinner and some bedroom fun time? He hated that, but had to pretend he loved it. I knew from spying on his phone that doing things with me felt like cheating on his boyfriend, the audacity of this man. I also knew that his boyfriend was pressuring him to leave me almost every day. He was stuck between a rock and a hard place. He started drinking, and when it got too heavy, that was when I decided that enough was enough. I wanted to ruin his life, not his health. Also, I grew up with an alcoholic father and did not want that for my kids. So I gathered all the evidence of his infidelity over the last 9 years, photos with different men, conversations, his Grindr profile, everything. Then I hired a divorce attorney and mailed the evidence to his employer. He has a morality clause in his contract and adultery breaks it. All his relatives, including parents, as well as our church, it was like a bomb exploded. He was fired. The congregation turned on him for cheating, not for being gay. His parents wouldn't take him in after I kicked him out. And he was shamed publicly. Gotta love that small town gossip mill and the cherry on the top. His boyfriend was run out of the town and he couldn't follow him because he wanted to fight for custody of our kids. Now almost a year later, I'm a free woman. I got to keep the house, my car and my business. He got 75% of the retirement and investments accounts, but he won't be paying alimony. I got full custody. He got visitations. I also got child support. He had to move 6 hours away to find a new job. Couldn't put the last job he worked at his whole life as a reference. His relationship with his family is rocky. His reputation in town is ruined. The love of his life left him for good. And my kids only tolerated him because I did my best to shield them and to tell them that he is still a good father to them. I also made sure to treat him politely, never talked bad about him, and had a lengthy talk about how their father being gay is okay. It's who he is and that it was not his fault, that the only wrong thing he did was hiding it from me. So I guess the results of his lengthy history of cheating was years of guilt followed by a ruined life. To me that sounds like the perfect revenge.
My cheating boyfriend married his ex while he was still dating me and I just found out. Now he says I'm the one for him and is begging for a second chance. My boyfriend and I first met 10 years ago when I was in university and had a casual friend with benefits situation since he didn't have the time for a girlfriend. We ended up parting ways after a couple years of casually sleeping together because he was moving several hours away and it just wasn't worth it. A year later, I was receiving texts from a random number and it turned out to be him. He let me know he was moving back to our hometown. During our conversation, he apologized for how our situationship was because he knew that I deserved a real relationship and he couldn't stop thinking that I was the one that got away. I decided to take things slow to see if he was serious about me because I never expected him to change his mind. I was finally getting the attention I wanted from him all those years ago and I fell hard. This made me forget about how he acted with his ex when we were sleeping together the first time. I would get stood up and he would have to leave all of a sudden to go help her or take her to work. They also shared a dog, but when you're just the F-buddy, what can you say? He went on and on about how crazy he was about me, yet this started to happen again. She would need his help all the time. I swear she was so helpless whenever he was around. He knew it made me upset that she was still involved in his life, but he only gave me one ridiculous excuse after another. He felt bad for her, she was crazy, and he was going to establish boundaries were things he said every time I brought up her codependency. Luckily, as our relationship progressed, she was less involved in his life, even moving 6 hours away at one point. It put me at ease and made me drop my guard. I never thought he was hooking up with her at any point in our relationship, but I just couldn't stand her involvement in things. It was like she was obsessed with him and he just let it happen. I went to therapy to work through things to sort out why I was so attached and why I was so afraid to let go. But he kept pulling me back in. I forgive him every time he messed up. I mean, he literally forgot my birthday and I just did nothing about it. We just always seemed to just work things out and then they'd be good again. He planned a huge party for me days after my birthday, and to me, that meant he was head over heels for me. I see how delusional that is, but he just seemed to have this hold on me. Over the next 3 years, I was emotionally wrecked. I was always met with an "I'm so sorry. I'll try better. I want to be better for you, and I want us to be better, things are just hard." I was always left feeling like he never quite showed up for me, like I tried to for him when things were at the most difficult or even when they were easy, but I literally had to beg for attention. It was so obvious how unhappy I was in that relationship and I felt unloved. I didn't even have anyone to tell because I didn't want to come across as whiny or in an I told you so moment. I started hoping for a reason to break up, like him cheating or wanting to move away again. That way, there would be a clean breakup and I wouldn't be the bad guy for ending things. Well, I got my reason over the course of 2 weeks. I found long brightly colored hairs left behind that didn't belong to me or anyone I knew. Something wasn't right and I had the strongest feeling that they belonged to his ex. I stalked her on social media once and I remembered she had hot pink hair, which matched the hairs I found. Still, that didn't feel like enough proof that he was cheating with her. So, I stalked her some more and found a marketplace listing for a pregnancy pillow that she posted. I found this suspicion but not really because she has sisters and could have posted it for them for all I know. I didn't even know how I would bring this up to my boyfriend because there was no way I could bring him up to him in a way I wouldn't get gaslit. The next day, I had a weird feeling in my gut and it screamed to check her Facebook page again. I felt like I was about to get my feelings hurt, but the sensation was only getting more annoying as the day went by. There on her Facebook page I saw she had changed her last name to my boyfriend's surname, and she had updated her profile picture to one of them together. The background seemed like a bouquet of flowers and a sonogram picture. I sat there wondering what the F to do. I'm angry and hurt all at once. I know I was looking for an excuse to leave the relationship but this was the last thing I was expecting. I just feel so worthless and used and lied to. It took a week for me to finally confront him about it, and things got bad. He admitted that he had married her because he was still in love with her, but he still thought I was the one. I told him that he couldn't have both, then asked if she thought we broke up or something. The answer's no, meaning she married him knowing he had a girlfriend. Somehow, this man had us both hooked, and he was just a piece of crap. He was nothing special and fed us lies over and over again. I said that being with him wasn't worth it and all he ever did was treat me horribly. I was always going to come second to his ex, so I dumped him, and he actually tried to get me to stay with him. I was shocked. When I asked why he wanted me now that I was leaving, he admitted that he liked the attention I always gave him and it's the only thing he liked about me. I must have sobbed for days after hearing that. I was never a person to him, just an obsessive fangirl. I cut him out of my life and I hope he doesn't manage to weasel himself back in like a effing rat.